talking about SNL, the history, the mysteries, and all the hot impressions in between, breaking down all the numbers as well. In your favorite sketches with special guests, it's on the Saturday Night Network.
Yes, welcome on in, everybody, to the Saturday Night Network for another edition of our feedback show, looking back at the previous cycle of Saturday Night Live and looking ahead to what is to come for the rest of 2024. I'm very excited to discuss this all tonight. My name is John from the SNL. We are, of course, here as a presentation of LateNighter.com, and I brought some friends along. Different friends will be joining us throughout the evening tonight. So first up, let me bring in our co-host for tonight, and that is the great Sammy K. Sammy, how are you?
John, I'm doing well. I really enjoy being on these episodes. It's great to obviously talk to our patrons and obviously connect with the community, but also as a fan of podcasts myself, when I see in my feed like a mailbag type episode, like I'm always like, I'm super excited about those. And these are basically our mailbag episodes. So I'm really excited to see after this run of show what everybody had to ask, and let's get into some questions.
Yeah, I feel like this is a really fun podcast to take figure out where we are in this SNL season. Is it a good season? Is it not going so great? What are the highlights? What are the lowlights? And I love getting to do that with all of our patrons as they come and call in throughout the night. So we're gonna have a ton of friends joining us throughout the show, and kicking off the show with us tonight is one of our amazing friends and patrons, and that is Fred. Fred, how are you?
Doing great. I'm happy to be here. Yeah, I agree with Sammy. I do love the idea that it's just like, who knows what questions are going to come up. It's like everything's fair game.
Yeah, that's why I love doing the shows, because we really hand the show off to the listeners. You guys can ask us anything you want. So in the future, in case you missed the forum this time, we do put out a forum the day of these feedback shows on our social platforms for you to submit your questions. We have a ton of questions to get to tonight, so we'll go through them all. And if you would like to sign up to be a part of these shows in the future, all you have to do is join us at patreon.com/the SNL Network, and we put out a form. You sign up for a time slot. I email you a time slot, and then you come on the show. All right, let's get things started. Let's talk about where we are here on this Monday, November 25th. When you last joined us for a feedback show, we were through the first 4 episodes of season 50. So we had just finished that Michael Keaton episode. We were headed towards the results of the election. And I think the feeling was pretty good on the season. Since then, it's been a little bit of a whirlwind with all of the things that have happened off the show and on the show. So I'm sure that we'll discuss all of that tonight. But first up, we had the John Mulaney episode, which was the week right before the election. And the big news or storyline of that week was Kamala Harris coming onto the show, getting to meet Maya Rudolph, and us getting to see that play out. And obviously, there was a big celebration of Kamala being there. Flash forward a few days later, Trump wins the election, and it's a much different tone at the show, who leans, largely liberal or left. And we end up having Bill Burr come and host the show, not knowing what that show will look like. The cold open is very surprisingly, well regarded among both sides, with the actual cast talking about their feelings on the election and Trump, and how they would like to be left off the list that Trump inevitably makes about people he wants to go after, which was very fun. Bill Burr coming back for the second time and very energetic, which ends up leading us to our pseudo Thanksgiving episode, the Charli XCX episode, our first double duty episode of the season, where Charli is good, host, was a musical guest before, now comes in and hosts, and we see a lot of sketches that are related to her brand, all the Brat stuff. And it's sort of our first episode that, though we did have Dana Carvey and James Austin Johnson, it's our first real post-election episode looking at what season 50 may look like. So now we are here in our break, headed towards 3 more episodes in December. Sammy, how are you feeling about the state of Saturday Night Live in season 50?
Yeah, I'm still feeling pretty good about the show. I do feel like in this run of episodes, for me, the Mulaney episode was my favorite of the 3. Obviously, that did, it's kind of hard to use that as a barometer for where the show is, because the Mulaney episodes have become kind of their own thing. You kind of know what you're going to get. But I really liked what we got in that episode, in an episode that wasn't that sketch dense. I do think these last 2 episodes in their own way have been kind of weird, especially the Bill Burr episode. But I do think as hosts, I think they both did a really good job. I think a lot of people going into the Charli XCX episode had pretty low expectations for her as a host. And I'm not somebody, I know we're going to talk about double duty later on that, in this episode, as far as like that concept, but like I'm into double duty hosts, and I think she did a really good job, and kind of exceeded my expectations, and I'm really enjoying what I'm seeing from the cast. Like I really do feel like we're getting a lot of new, as much as like in some of these episodes we've been bringing back the Thanksgiving baking contest and things like that I don't necessarily want to see, but I do feel like I am getting a lot of new from a lot of the cast, and we're seeing kind of the newer players step forward, and that's kind of what I've been wanting for pretty much since we started potting, with SNL stats. Like we want to see kind of this next generation that really does feel like we're getting there. I do feel like, the Mulaney episode still though was kind of like my highlight of this run. So I'd like to see us kind of go back up in a sort of up towards the next trajectory in this next run of hosts. And I think a lot of it does have to do with the feeling in the room and in the writer's room of everything with the election. So I think maybe with a little time removed from that, it'll be interesting to see what the show does.
I agree. I think the changing of the guard is a huge storyline for the season so far through 7 episodes, or through the first, a little bit over a third of the season, with a lot of the players that we didn't expect to be, near the leaderboard of most sketches or most screen time being there. So we'll definitely talk about that. Fred, for you, how are you feeling about the state of the show? I got to talk to you a little bit on our SNL sketch breakdown right after that Mulaney episode, but now that we're on the main feed here, I want to get your thoughts about how you're feeling about season 50.
Yeah, like the Mulaney episode definitely stood out for me. I was also very impressed with Charli XCX. I think she definitely delivered. I mean, if the writing was not my cup of tea for some of the sketches, that's not really her fault. Yeah, and I also agree. A lot of the younger cast members are definitely getting a lot of screen time, which is really impressive. I guess sometimes, I never thought I'd say this, but sometimes I miss Keenan or Mikey Day now. I feel like they're actually underutilized. But for example, somebody that really stands out to me is Emil Joachim. I think he's just so impressive and charming, and I love that he's gelling really well with the cast and he's getting time. So. But yeah, the episodes have been a little uneven, I guess, but I just love SNL, so I don't mind too much.
Yeah, I think that this has been a good season so far. I think that it's interesting, it's when they do have this election stuff and it takes a certain portion or screen time, away from the rest of the cast for the show, since they were bringing in so many outsiders. It's tough to evaluate it in comparison to previous eras, but just the feeling of, rewatching some of these episodes and doing notes on them, I definitely see sort of a downswing, at least for now, like you said, of Keenan and Mikey, who, Keenan has really not been involved. He'd one episode, the Bill Burr episode, that was a throwback Keenan episode, but many nights where Keenan's been practically nowhere. Mikey Day gets shut out last time. Heidi Gardner, who had probably her best season in season 49, has definitely taken a step back through this first third of the season. And what we're seeing is that, James Austin Johnson, Andrew Dismukes, Sarah Sherman are getting a lot of roles, especially roles where, are not, prototypical roles for them. We're not getting Sarah Squirm stuff from Sarah Sherman. We're not getting a lot of Andrew sketches that we were getting last season that really felt like, oh, that's the Dismuke sketch of the week that we absolutely love. He's just playing a lot of utility roles that used to go to Mikey are now going to Andrew. So getting to see him differentiate himself, I think, is really interesting. Obviously, James being involved in the election, doing a lot of voiceover work, his involvement. So for me, it's a fascinating look at the cast currently. And then with the rookies, I think Ashley was the one who sort of fell behind, but in this previous cycle, we got to see Ashley Padilla have her own starring sketch. And then Emil had some really good nights. I mean, the last 2 episodes, both Emil and Ashley were in 10 sketches the last 2 episodes. So they're averaging 5 sketches an episode just for the last 2. So the willingness to involve them in the show is something really good. It's something that I don't think that SNL has done so great in the last few years, is taking their new talent and then working them in. So, Sammy, how do you think about how the cast is gelling together through these first 7 episodes?
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of nailed it as far as like what's really happening as far as like with the cast. The older players kind of taking a back seat. I do think, it's interesting that we aren't getting, necessarily those pieces from like the, sort of the Dismuke pieces or the Sarah pieces and having them do more of a utility role in sketches. Like, I'm hoping that them taking that step that step up isn't gonna, take away those opportunities. I mean, it's been a while since we've gotten like a real Sarah Squirm sketch, so I do hope that, as much as I'm really happy to be seeing them kind of taking, more of the starring role, that we don't lose their voice in the process. And I think Dismukes has been getting more of those opportunities as far as like, I guess you can kind of put the train sketch from the Keaton episode as kind of like a Dismuke sketch, but like
That was the one I'd say we had this season.
Yeah, that's like kind of the one. So I'm hoping it's not just one per run, but yeah, no, I think it's been amazing to see the new cast get to do stuff. Like it's funny to like have to say that because when you watch older seasons of the show, it was never like, oh, a new cast member is just kind of on the bench because of like just how the show was back then. So I do feel like it's more of a sort of a classic feel of like, okay, we hired these people to do comedy and we're letting them do comedy. I think since we started podcasting, there's just been so many things going on with COVID and things like that maybe put a wrench in those certain things. But even before that, you have people like Luke Knoll or John Rudensky, who just like it feels like they just never got a chance. So I'm really glad to see the show giving the cast a chance because that's like what they're hired to do. So I'm feeling good, and I'm very much subscribed to your sort of thesis that this feels like such an ensemble version of the show. Like it really does feel like any episode that you turn on, like you're gonna get a nice variety, and it's a variety show. So as much as I like to see stars come up and really take over the show because it's really that means like the show has found like a Will Ferrell or a Kate McKinnon. Like I want that just as a comedy fan and SNL fan, but just being able to see a little bit from everybody is great. That's but it's good to get that variety.
Yeah, there's definitely been like a cultural shift. I feel like it's like the first year where we're not talking about like, oh, we're not seeing enough of XYZ. What's their future on the show going to be like? Like, I feel like it's pretty even.
Yeah, usually when we have those conversations, it's about younger cast members and not the older cast members. So that's definitely seems like a conscious shift by the show to use their cast more properly, I would think. And then, obviously Heidi and Mikey and Keenan are amazing tools to, take out of the toolbox whenever you need them for a particular episode. So I do feel good about all of that. And it sort of goes back to, a question that I think is a little bit of a theme that it maybe will come up tonight. And Fred, I'll ask you this, is that, in your history of watching SNL, do we know, which cast member is the cream that rises to the top, or who is that star of the show when the show is happening? Or is it only, years down the road that we look back and we then realize, oh, that was the star of the show at the time? Because I have felt that this is an ensemble cast where no one, anyone could have a good week at any point and there's no real star. But I do wonder, maybe, is it really just that no one's stepping up, or will we look back in a few years and be like, damn, that person, we didn't take note of them at the time?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting thought. I feel like maybe Marcelo is kind of like, he kind of comes to mind, but it doesn't mean that he like dominates the show. But I feel like
but maybe it's too early for him.
Maybe it's too early. Yeah. Like, but he's definitely like, there's something about him and his presence. I feel like on the show and off the show that is really big. Same with like Bowen, Chloe, like they're kind of like outside of the show, also super popular.
Yeah, that's true. Perhaps, one of the reasons that this era doesn't have a star or a true star on the show is because everyone is becoming stars off the show more easily. So the show is built differently. So those are definitely things to think about. Fred, anything else that you want to talk about when it comes to season 50? Any stray questions you had for us or thoughts that you wanted to bring up on the show tonight?
Just like what I mentioned before about like email Joaquin, like I just really think like he kind of reminds me of like when Marcelo first joined the show. There was just like something like about his presence. Like I feel like even like in these like smaller bit roles, something about him like he like elevates like every scene that he's in. I've just been like very impressed with him in general.
Me too. And again, it's, you know, he hasn't had a moment that I think that if somebody wasn't watching the show, or like you have a friend who's a very casual friend of SNL, we haven't had an Emil Joaquin moment where you could be like, send it to them and be like, oh, you know, check this guy out besides his stand up on Update, right? Because obviously that's just a natural way for him to build in the stuff he did before the show onto the show. But if you are like you're obsessed with the show, you're watching it every week, I think you are seeing those same things, Fred, which is that, you know, little by little, as he becomes more comfortable there, he really, you know, thrives in this environment. And some of the best cast members in the history of the show may have been nervous or, you know, may not truly felt it. But at least for us at home, we see through the screen that when they are in the roles that they're in, there is this confidence, this swagger about them. And I do feel like Emil carries that with him.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Fred, great to talk to you and have you kick off the show with us tonight. I really appreciate it and love getting to see your thoughts in the chat all the time. So here's hoping that the next 3 episodes, our Christmas block, will be just as fun to talk about when we speak to you at the end of the year.
Yeah, I'm eager to see who else they're going to book. We only know the first booking, right? At this point.
Well, we do know the second booking. So if you have been, I
Oh,
don't know what I'm allowed to say about it. But
what did I miss? Okay,
Nothing announced.
Okay. So there's nothing officially announced yet, but it is out there. So I could confirm that if you have heard a rumor about the second host of this block, that is a legitimate rumor. But maybe let's wait until a little bit later in the show before we dive into it deeper. Because I don't want to get myself in trouble, and maybe some people won't listen to the show after an hour. So
okay, excellent. Well, then I'll stay tuned. But thank you.
Yeah.
Great chatting.
Yeah, we'll talk about it a little later.
Right.
Great to chat with you, Fred, and talk to you soon.
All right.
Yeah. See you, Fred.
Thanks, buddy. Bye. All right, Sammy, let's bring in another great patron of ours to chat some season 50 with. So let's bring in my man, Will is here. Will, what is up?
What's up, John? Good to see you. Good to see you, Sammy. Great to be with you
Hey,
guys.
how's it going?
It's going well.
Yeah, great to catch up with you. It's been a while, but Will, how have you been enjoying season 50?
I've been enjoying season 50 quite a bit. I was listening to the conversation you guys are having right now, and it has been nice to see a lot of the new cast members get integrated. And I kind of thought they'd be a lot more benched and kind of go to the tried and true veterans a lot more this season, but seeing them get in the mix has been really nice. And I think seeing the variety of hosts, I mean, it's all been kind of mixed results with, you know, some of the writing of the show or the tone with the having to focus on the election. But it has been nice to kind of see that, yeah, season 50, the more things change, the more they stay the same. So those tried and true things we can count on every season. And it's been fun to watch it kind of unfold and watch people rise and then some veterans still be in the mix.
Do you have a favorite episode so far from what you've seen?
So far this season, I would say the Ariana Grande episode was actually my favorite. I think that was just from a consistency throughout the entire episode. Guy. I mean, you listen, you got me. I was going to try not to say it, but you got me. Yeah, I did enjoy doing it and coming back again. You know, got the new Lisa from Temecula, so it's great to have it in the mix. But yeah, I've really enjoyed the Ariana Grande episode, and then from this run of shows in November, it's been the Mulaney episode. But I feel like there have been some pretty good highs, and I feel like there's still room for higher highs as we get towards the end of the season and then into the new year. I think there'll be even bigger moments to come, which is exciting.
Definitely. Do you have any questions for Sammy or I?
Well, I was going to ask you too, like what have been, you know, I'm listening to the shows and the feedback and the hot takes, and I wanted to know what are your personal highlights for the season so far, and what is your, I guess, wish for the second half, whether it's a host, a musical guest, a cast member rising. What are you hoping for in the second half? And what do you like?
Sammy, you want to take this one first?
Oh man. I mean, that's a great question. It's hard. It's such a cheat code, but I have really enjoyed seeing the Lonely Island back. Like if I'm like, that's not like, I'm trying not to be objective.
You
like,
can say
just
it.
Like
you can be a fan.
Yeah. I can just be a fan. I can just be a fan. I was like losing myself trying to come up with a reason to love the Lonely Island. No, been super happy to see that back. Just having Andy in the building has been amazing. It really is just like in a year that's been so crazy with the election and everything. It is that and the Lonely Island podcast has just been such a nice surprise, something I was not expecting at 29 years old to be seeing new digital shorts has been great. So that has been great. And then as far as what I want to see more of, this feels like a basic answer, but it's the 50th season. Like I do feel like kind of jumping off of that original point, I was getting a little sort of not necessarily sick of the cameos, but like again, like this is a variety show. Like I want a variety and like to really celebrate all of the 50-year history, not just in February. Like I'd like to honestly see more alumni come in, whether it's the host or just bring back a classic sketch. Like I do feel like that has been great having Andy, Dana, and Maya there. But I do think after 4 or 5 episodes in a row, I was like, okay, like let's get more. Like I want more. So I'm a little greedy, but that's what I want to see more of.
I like it.
Yeah, I mean, how can I not pick the Lonely Island? If to me, like Sandberg is probably the most beloved cast member like ever, maybe just because like, and I don't know if that's a hot take, but really like I don't see too many people that don't like Andy Samberg. And again, this is a guy who from that cast, that like great third golden era cast, he was the one who never really came back to the show. He hosted once, he brought in a couple digital shorts over the years, but just really like over the last several years, we haven't seen him at all. A lot of people felt like he was over the show or maybe got too big for the show. And we would only see him again at the 50th. And just him being a part of the season has been absolutely delightful. So I'm totally with Sammy on that. And I do think that they're honoring the history of the show by having Dana Carvey there. I mean, Dana could easily have been a cast member this season. And I don't know if, contract stuff, it didn't work out to do that, or maybe it would just be seen as like not like kind of a step down in life for him to go back to being a cast member. But as far as I'm concerned, like Daryl Hammond could announce him as a special guest every single week. And I'd be totally okay with that, because to me, like he has been such a pleasantly surprising part of this season to have him there. Again, like no Jan Hooks, no Phil Hartman around. Like Kevin Nealon hasn't come back to the show in a very long time. Lovitz is a very specific character that I don't think that like people would want to see every single week. But Dana being one of the greatest cast members of all time from a generation that we saw him host a few times, but like a generation that's sort of maybe still hanging on and watching the show, and for them to bring in more viewers linearly because Dana's on it, I think is a brilliant choice. So for me, like I'm a little less like feeling like it's not season 50-ish. Like to me, this is a very unique thing that they have people like Andy and Dana and Maya a part of the season. So I've been really enjoying that.
Yeah, I think it's been great too. I mean, I would kind of echo that too, in that, in years past, there's been obviously the complaints about some of the stunt casting and bringing just the biggest celebrity, but it has felt like this year, every role just is up to grabs for the best cast members or any cast members in the history of the show to be able to come back and do those things and be able to be celebrated generationally, like just across all generations. I think that, to your point, it's been really fun to have Dane in the building, have Andy back, Lonely Island, and Maya. Everyone's been great to see them in the mix with the current cast, while new cast members are still getting a chance to shine too. It's been great.
Yeah, I have a feeling, and again, I'll sort of save this conversation maybe for a little bit later in this show, but with the host that is projected to come in for December 14th, potentially, that we may end up getting some cast members from the Bad Boys era of SNL that we haven't seen in a while could come back for that episode. And then if the Christmas show ends up being another former cast member, that's always a possibility as well, to get to see more of those people. I think that part of not having other people from the history of the show coming in throughout these last 7 episodes has to do with the fact that it's season 50's headliners have been pretty normal. A lot of people promoting movies, a lot of, the hottest musicians of 2024 have been the headliners, I'd say, barring, save for Mulaney, right? So, if it wasn't that, and we ended up opening up the season with, sort of like an SNL feel, and we ended up having Eddie doing Christmas and all of that stuff, would we see more cast members, and would it feel more to your style of what you're talking about, Sammy, about this really feeling like season 50? I think it would in that case.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, though, and it's tough because in the social media era, we know a lot more about who's at the show and things like that. And I think, Amy Poehler's been at the show recently. I think Anna Gasteir's been at the show recently. So, just knowing that some of these people are in the building and not getting them in for at least one thing, I'm a greedy SNL
That would be
fan,
my wish as well.
But it has been nice to have, certainly been nice to have Dana and Maya and Andy in the building. It's been great.
Yeah, it's been absolutely fantastic. So Will dropped out. Hopefully all is good there. It might just be an internet thing. So if he comes back, we'll bring him on to just finish up some final thoughts. But in the meantime, we got a couple of other patrons waiting in the wings, and then we have your questions to get to. So we're not leaving tonight without answering every single question that's in our mailbag. So let's bring in a couple of patrons here. So first, let's bring in a fan favorite from the last feedback show. Let's bring in Deej. Deej is here.
Hello.
How are you, Deej?
Deej.
I saw Wicked on the weekend. It was awesome.
I saw it too.
Yep.
Great time.
So I'm sure, is it a part one? Is that what the deal is?
Yes. Basically, it's act one of the musical.
Okay, got it. See, like they should. I guess they don't want to promote it that way. Would that prevent people from coming to see it? Because I was like, it's a big commitment.
They did the same thing with Dune. Sorry to cut you off. They did the same thing with Dune like 2 years ago. They didn't promote it as a part one, and then you get there and it's like, oh, surprise.
And I'm making progress on my podcast because I got the intro recorded, so we're at least that far.
Congratulations!
Yay!
Nice.
It's a very big deal. Well, Deej, great to get to talk to you. I know we spoke a little bit last week when we recorded our SNL sketch breakdown for the Charli XCX episode. So I'm curious to get your thoughts now on the main feed to talk about this season. We'll answer some questions in a moment, but I want to bring in one more patron to join us for this section of the show. So let's bring in Ian is here as well. Ian, are you there? What's up, man?
I am here. Hello.
Hello, Ian. Oh, nice shirt, Ian. Love it.
Hey, thanks.
That is nice.
Okay, perfect. You doing well, Ian?
Yeah, trying to be, just going through life, adult stuff, but I'm glad SNL's back, so.
Yeah, 100%. Is that from a particular episode, that shirt, the SNL 50, or is that like?
Yeah, it was from their merch site. It's Bill Burr and McGee episode, so it's got like the ticket stub thing on the back.
Nice.
Yeah, well, happy to have you. I'm gonna just see, because I didn't get to say goodbye to Will, so let me just see if you could just come on for 2 seconds and just say goodbye to him, and then I'll catch up with you, Ian, and you, Deej. Will, you all good, buddy?
I am. I'm alive. Just had some technical issues, but thanks for having me, John. Good to see you, Sammy. Now the Patriots. Good to see you guys tonight. Yeah,
great to get to talk to you, Will, and hope you enjoy season 50. And come back soon. No technical difficulties. We're gonna have a long chat about SNL next time.
You got it. Hold me to that. You guys take care.
Okay.
Yep. See ya.
Talk to you soon, Will. All right, Deej and Ian. So Deej, we got to hear your thoughts, like I said, a little bit last week on season 50. So I'm gonna send it over to Ian right now for telling me his thoughts about these last block of episodes. Ian, how are you feeling?
I'm still loving it. Maybe not my favorites still. Like I still think that, the top half was, more up my alley, but I still had a good time watching it. Like I don't have that many complaints.
Okay. Any favorites? Any favorite moments from these last few episodes?
Beppo for sure. Loved Beppo a lot.
Yes, I'm with you.
I actually really that hook in. I already forgot the name of it, even though it's catchy. That Lonely Island. Here I go. It was right there. Yep, I knew it. That one's really. I liked that one a lot, especially after listening to them talk about it on the Lonely Island Seth Meyers pod. Yeah. Hearing the backstory about how Charli came up with all her little things. I was like, oh. She's kind of fit for that. I wouldn't mind seeing her come back after hearing all that. Like she's got the chops for sure. So
yeah, that is awesome news. That podcast came out today, by the way, if you haven't heard that one yet. So
sorry,
it's
spoiler
really
alert.
Cool that they're No, it's all good. No, it's great because a lot of people are not listening to those shows. So I'd love to recommend it. That's Seth and the Lonely Island in the Lonely Island podcast. All right. Well, guys, let's take some questions we'll open up the mailbag and I'll throw some stuff to you, Deej, and you, Ian and Sammy. Let's start with this one. So we just talked about this Charli XCX episode a little bit. So here comes from our friend Culkin, who always sends in a question. Culkin Carabinieri says, should they stop bringing in musical artists for double duty for a while? They have leaned on them progressively over the last decade, and the quality often leans languorous. What does that mean, Langorous, Sammy? Do you know what that means?
You're putting me on the
Langorous?
spot. You're embarrassing my knowledge of the word. No, I'm not sure.
Yeah, we need somebody in the research department. Tell us what that means.
Yeah.
But I assume that is a negative word. So I wouldn't mind if it
Sounds
became
negative.
a rare occurrence. It sounds negative. I wouldn't mind if it became a rare occurrence and they saved it for musician actors like JT or Donald Glover. So yeah, guys, that's been something we talked about last week throughout the show a little bit, that it seems like there's two things that are happening now that didn't used to happen. Number one is it seems like they have to get a double duty performer or maybe two in every single season. And it seems like all the people that they're booking for double duty have previously been musical guests on the show. Back in the day when we had a double duty performer, oftentimes we may not have seen them headline SNL at all prior to this. So going back to Culkin's question, should they stop doing this for a while? Is it working? Is it not working? Deej, what do you think?
Well, personally, there's at least one or two I'd love to come back, because one of my favorite episodes is the Bruno Mars episode. I mean, he was just slayed and everything there. Did the Marysville Brothers and the Pandora thing. You want to use it a bit sparingly, of course. You don't want to have like every other week have this kind of thing. And I guess a lot of it also depends on, is someone who's musical have an album to promote, because it's very rare that I've seen someone come on the show and not have something coming out, or have something out, or be the it artist at the moment.
Yeah, Ian, what do you think about the double duty, bookings that we've had them be so much a part of SNL the last few seasons?
I don't know if I didn't realize this was a hot take, but I actually like when it happens. I don't know if it's just because I'm a lover of music and SNL, but I'm like, oh, cool. Plus, I mean, I've been a fan of like Billy. I think she did a great job. Charli XCX did a great job. Ariana Grande could do double duty if she wanted to, I think. JT back in the day, Donald Glover would love to see again. So yeah, I'm happy to see it. If they did it more or less, I wouldn't even be mad, but I do enjoy it. I didn't realize that was a rare thing, because I hear a lot of people saying that recently that they don't like.
Yeah,
it.
I don't mind it at all. I think you could play with the format a little bit when you have a double duty host and musical guest. I think that's the only, pivot I would make, which is like, I was watching that first JT episode from back in the day in 2003, and he goes like his monologue was like a musical monologue where he's serenading Steve Higgins. And then from that moment, Steve Higgins actually then goes and introduces JT to perform Rock Your Body. And he literally walks from the host stage over to the musical guest stage. And that's before we get to see any regular sketch in the episode. And I know I'm a JT fan, but getting to watch that to me is this is it's goosebumpy, because they're doing something that feels a little bit different and exciting. And I think when you have a performer with so many skills, I think Charli's in the building. If you think you can use her in a way that maybe slightly different or play with it, I would do that for the double duty hosting musical guests. But in general, I don't mind them, having at least one a season. Sammy, how do you feel?
Yeah, no, I wonder if this conversation is coming up just because obviously we had the Ariana Grande episode, which I know wasn't double duty, but she is a musician that hosted, and then having Charli come in. No, I enjoy the double duty booking. I think it's cool. Just the idea that you're putting all of your weight behind one person to kind of headline an episode of, a 90-minute episode of TV, I think is very cool. And, it might be that, we're seeing a lot of kind of similar, artists from maybe one genre. So I wonder if maybe, and obviously pop is pop. It's the most popular, it's pop music. You want to get somebody that, people, know the songs and things like that. But, maybe it would help if they, found a way to kind of expand, sort of the different genres of music. Somebody who I've wanted to see do double duty for a long time is Tyler, the Creator, who, is has a big album out. He's somebody who, is not a pop star. So just having maybe a diversity in genre would maybe help people, kind of who aren't really into double duty, at least, kind of get something else from these type of episodes.
But the only disadvantage I see with it, it's a very, very, very minor one, is usually relying, okay, you have all the bumpers that appear before each of the commercial breaks when they come back. So you know that when they come up back break and they say, oh, it's the musical guest, then, there's going to be a change. That's when the musical guest comes on. But when they're doing the same thing, you don't know. Well, you kind of know from the timing of things, but still trying to figure out, because there's some people that don't necessarily watch the musical guest. So that's kind of their signal to go do something else. Although, interestingly, I saw a supercut just this last weekend of all the times that were double duty hosts were introduced by other people. So it's interesting to see who they get to do that sometimes.
Yes, and we do reward those moments as an actual segment appearance, because that's a deliberate choice by the producers to choose who is going to do that. So if like Bo and Yang was going to introduce Charli XCX, that's a choice of picking the cast member that's going to go out there and have their moment in that segment. So it actually counts as a segment appearance, whereas the host introducing a musical guest is something that naturally happens in the in the show. So that's a little inside baseball for stats people, but it's very true, Deej. That is an interesting aspect to things here. And going back to my original point about musical guests and then them turning into future SNL hosts, I think that given that is the trend we've been seeing, I think you have to start thinking about which musical guests may end up being hosts either later this year or down the road. I know when Olivia Rodrigo was a musical guest a few years back, everyone was like, oh, she's for sure going to be a host. But, is it Sabrina Carpenter, who was the musical guest for the finale last year, or Chappell Roan or something like that? These are things, when these big names start coming on the show, I think we start looking at potential hosts down the road. So it is something fascinating to think about. Ian, did you have any questions for us on the show tonight? Anything that you wanted to talk about specifically?
I actually did want to bring up, kind of adding to that musical guest thing.
Sure.
Kind of back in the day, like when they have stand-ups, like imagine a stand-up just doing like more stand-up in the middle, kind of like they used to do back in the day, like how George Carlin kind of came on, did a bit of a stand-up here and there. I kind of think that would be interesting, unless they don't want to like ruin their whole bits, unless they write specific bits for SNL. But I guess that would be a personal choice for the comic if they were to go that route. But I think it would be interesting to see them do double duty that way. I mean, I love the music aspect, don't get me wrong, but I think it would be cool to have like kind of stand up throughout. I don't know, keep the last.
It's a real throwbacky idea. I mean, I think obviously when the show first started, it was more a variety show and they didn't really know what to do with the cast, so you would have some hosts who were doing a few monologues, and then I think like in the first 10 years there was a few times where we would have a host who would do a monologue at the end of the episode, especially if they were running out of time. But that was before they had like a million pre-tapes, so they could sort of fit into things. And I think the show is just constructed differently. But it's a fascinating idea, because that could be a future, whoever the next producer is of the show down the road, like that may be a good way to play with the format, which is if you have a really great stand-up, and instead of them doing a 10-minute monologue at the start of the show, maybe they do 2 5-minute monologues, and making the show feel fresh. Because look, there are a lot of casual fans of the show, but there's also some super fans who watch every week who see the same thing and look for any element of change is exciting for people who have watched the show for 50 years. Deej, what about you? Anything else you want to talk about from the season or questions you have for us?
No, I'm here for the people's questions for this kind of thing.
Let's take one more. All right. So, let's take this one from Victor, who I saw in the chat tonight. So, hey, Victor, he asks, based on the first 7 episodes, how would you compare this season to the last few seasons? Has the quality changed? What has or needs to be improved? Do you think it'll get better or worse? Keep up the good work as always. Thanks, Victor. All right. So let's make this pretty simple. Based on the first 7 episodes, how would you compare this to the last few seasons? Deej, I'll start with you.
Well, last few seasons has always been these really big 17-person casts. There was a time back in, I'm not sure if some of the seasons were due to the budget cuts, but that's where you have so many people, so many different comic voices, and of course the competition to try and get their stuff on the air is always very difficult for that, which also makes it difficult on the newer people, because as I mentioned before, I was very surprised that for this year they actually added new cast members. I think it would have been just fine with just the cast that upgrade the featured players, and then maybe after 51 then go for some new cast members. So it could also be like you're mentioning, that someone like Keenan and Mikey Day have been sort of stepping back a little bit to give people a chance, because there's lots of the Mikey Day roles that could be played by Michael, could be played by Devin, could be played by a lot of people. So it's just been really, really we always have to fight. There's like last year, Michael Longfellow's year was very, very light. But this year he's getting a bit better. So I like. We would all like an even playing field. They would like an even playing field, but we have to realize the reality of what the SNL process is.
Yeah, definitely. Ian, how would you compare season 50 to some of the last few so far?
I wish I'd rewatched more of the last few seasons before this question.
You don't have to do that much homework for tonight.
But I feel like, if I remember correctly, I feel like there's a lot more like newbies, like host wise, music, like they're bringing a lot of more new faces in, especially for season 50 that I would expect compared to the other seasons. And I feel like she kind of touched on it, is the they're kind of switch. It does feel more ensemble, and they're kind of giving the younger cast members a little bit more screen time. And I don't know if that is for any particular reason, but it does feel different, because I feel like a few years ago we always had our star shiners, whether it be like Cecily or Kate or even I feel like Heidi and Mikey would still be considered up there compared to this season, really.
Yeah, Sammy, what about you? I mean, I know you've been podcasting with us for the last few years. Does this season feel any different than the last few, or is it part of the same, sort of era and status that you would rank this one compared to the others?
Yeah, I mean, luckily earlier today I did go back and I watched about 4 seasons of SNL just to answer this question. I feel like, I don't think this season, there's like a run in season 48 that I feel like we go back to, that Steve Martin Short, Keke Palmer sort of run. I don't think that we in this season have gotten to that. I really do feel like that is kind of the sort of the height of, at least in this project of this podcast, of what we've covered at SNL. But I do feel like this season to me has been fairly consistent outside of maybe the Gene Smart and Michael Keaton episodes. I do feel like, each of these episodes, there hasn't for me been like a big like stinker or something that I'm just like, oh, this is kind of just like really bring down the episode. But at the same time, I feel like my real highlights aren't as strong maybe as in previous seasons that we've covered. So I think we're on the right track, but I do feel like this cast is still kind of in this figuring it out mode. But I do really feel like we're close to what could potentially be another great season.
Yeah, I think the closest comparison, and I just rewatched these seasons, it was 28 to 30, which was the post Will Ferrell seasons, and SNL was going probably through a little bit of a rough patch, but they were slowly bringing in new cast members that would end up really turning around the show at a certain point. And I think that SNL is starting to have the building blocks of their future now. 28 had its moments similar to 48, had a great run. I'd say 49 was probably a little bit of the downswing similar to 29, and comparing 30 to 50 is sort of no comparison at this point, in just that 50 is actually obviously celebrating the show, whereas 30 didn't really do that. The vibes are a lot stronger here, but it is still sort of feeling like we're in this post Kate McKinnon, Cecily Strong era where the show is still looking for an identity. I don't know that we're going to know what the identity of 48 to 50 was until we're at least a few years down the road and we can sort of look back in retrospect. But I have to think that the show is building towards what post 50 will look like, and we see that with the usage of their newer cast. So for me, it's all exciting stuff. I'm definitely feeling really good about this season. I don't know that we're looking at 50 will be an all-time great one, but I think that given its ability to celebrate the history of the show, I think it'll always be looked at more fondly than maybe the individual episodes will have deserved. So it's a fascinating sort of, to look back and maybe even rewatch this feedback show 5 years down the road and see how we were feeling about this one. Ian, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Anything else you want to say?
I don't know. I'm looking forward to seeing the newbies coming up on the 7th. And I was trying to Google the rumors. I couldn't see anything. So it's exciting that I just still don't know. But I was like, who could it be? I have my hopes, but we'll see.
You should make a guess.
I'll try and
make a guess.
Who do you think it is?
I don't know.
I'll try and give a couple of clues as we go throughout the show tonight, so people can figure it out. I'm trying not to get in trouble. That's
I don't want anyone to get in trouble. At least not.
But yes, it is out there if you know where to look for it, and I will allude to it as well. Of course, we should hopefully get that information between now and our the NBC people going off on Thanksgiving break later in the week. So, Deej, thank you so much for joining us as well. Anything that you would like to say?
No, just waiting for new episodes. And as I mentioned before, I do have a Bill Hader focused podcast in development. Get off of there, cat. Bazinga making his appearance once again.
Nice.
So I'm hoping to get that to premiere in January, just to get all the sort of the technical details and clips and stuff. So I look forward to doing it with Casey Killingsworth. He's going to be back.
Well, Casey will be joining us later on tonight, so we'll catch up with him and get to talk to him as well. So, Ian and Deej, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Looking forward to catching up with you in about a month's time as we wrap up the first half of season 50. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
See you guys.
See ya.
Bye.
All right, Sammy K, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Doing great.
You having fun?
You know, I'm having a great time. I'm excited to see who's next.
Okay, well, I'm excited to bring in somebody that I've never gotten the pleasure of speaking to before, but I'm excited to bring him on for the first time on a show here on the Saturday Night Network, and that is a dog? No, not a dog. It's Dan. Dan, how are you?
What's going on, gentlemen? They immediately started barking as soon as you.
They were so excited. They were so excited to get to talk some Saturday Night Live. Don't worry about
their
it.
Their first podcast, I assume. The dogs.
No, I actually have a podcast, and they do this every single time. It's like clockwork, and now they can say they've done it on multiple podcasts.
Yeah,
that's no problem with us, Dan. Thanks so much for joining us. Where are you calling us from?
I'm calling from Oak Park, Illinois, just outside of Chicago, literally the first suburb west. And thank you for having me on. First time. You're gonna make me follow up Deej on my first time.
I know it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure. She's awesome, but it's great to get to hear from you, Dan. So, again, the first time that our listeners get to talk to you. So you said you have a podcast. What's your podcast about?
My podcast is named Soul Radio. It has been running since about 2016. I mainly started it as an excuse way back in the day to have conversations with people I would have no business exchanging words with otherwise, just like an excuse to pick people's brains. Up to this point, I've recently had Brian O'Halloran, who played Dante on Clerks. I've actually had SNL alum Luke Knoll on twice.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
His second shout out on this episode, Luke Knoll.
Yeah.
Shout out to Luke Knoll. Miss you, brother. And thank you so much. This is an honor. I discovered you guys over the summer. Then I was rocking with the top hosts list. That's how I got into you guys, and I stuck around for the season.
That's so awesome. Well, Dan, thanks for joining us and supporting us and being a part of our coverage here. So why don't you tell us how you're feeling about season 50 so far, 7 episodes into the season?
I am feeling good about it. I almost enjoy more experimental, more transitional seasons over ones where the cast has been established. Because at the very least, you're not running the risk of fatigue, and they're also more open to new ideas. To your point, having people like Ashley Padilla and the other new cast members on because you don't have a Kate McKinnon or a Cecily to really lean on. And I think it's been really interesting. There's definitely been some hits, definitely been some misses. My personal favorite episode is probably the Ariana Grande episode. Just because I have a dumb 12-year-old brain. I thought the Jennifer Coolidge sketch was hysterical. And Dana Carvey popping out of the mirror was the icing on the cake for me. It doesn't take much to please me.
Okay, well, that's good. I mean, low bar to clear for Saturday Night Live, but it sounds to me like, having Dana on the show was really exciting for you. So is he one of your favorite cast members?
He is. So I started watching SNL all the way back in 2000, around the time of the 2000 election. I'm 37. I started watching with my father. My kids are starting to watch this season with me. And at that point, it was the famous Bush versus Gore debate sketches that were really getting a lot of attention. And the first episode I watched, Dana Carvey actually hosted. And he appeared in the cold open to play George H.W. Bush, where I believe it's like he's trying to console W, played famously by Will Ferrell. And then his monologue, he did the comparison between the faces you make while imitating HW and W, and just the little like differences in the way he squints his eyes and the way he moves his lips. He became an immediate top cast member for me.
Yeah, it's so impressive. And I think that episode, if I remember correctly, has one of my favorite Dana Carvey sketches, which is him also with Will Ferrell playing W. And it's like an Of Mice and Men parody where he just like wants to go and shoot George W. Bush because he thinks he's like dishonoring the family. It's like a hunting sketch. And I think you could probably seek that out online. So that's a really good one. So Dan, do you have any questions for Sammy or I about this season that you want to talk about?
Yeah. So so this is for you, John. I see you have come around on Domingo. Like he's grown on you in the by the second sketch. Are there any other sketches where the second go round sold it for you when the first didn't?
Oh, that's a really good question.
That's a good question.
Yeah, it's a great one. I'm going to have to think about that one as we sort of talk this through. I know that, so my process typically, Dan, is that like I do the hot take shows right after the episode. And oftentimes they're just like really off the cuff thoughts about what worked for me or whatnot. And it's really a hard show to get to do because, you have to be in the right mindset. I have to be open to actually, if I know that somebody else didn't like the sketch, then like I don't come in fair to it. So I try and like be very neutral and just give my thoughts. And oftentimes it is between Saturday night and when we do the roundtables on Monday that I actually watch the sketch a second time and then appreciate it more. So I would say, I would say that that would be probably, I'm trying to think, because one of the things I've been doing for those Everything You Need to Know videos that we've been posting is I have been rewatching some of the old seasons to figure out what sketches we want to include in them. And I think maybe a guy that I didn't give enough credit to in terms of some of the sketches that he did before he was a Weekend Update anchor is Seth Meyers, who I've been seeing in some of those seasons that you said you first started watching, Dan. His pre-update stuff, he gets like ripped on a lot, but he wrote a lot of good sketches that he starred in when him and Amy first were on the show together. And I've been turned around on a lot of those recently because I sort of just, when I first watched it, had the narrative of like, oh yeah, like I love Seth. I felt he was like the quarterback of this great era. And before that, it just wasn't working for him. But that was one of those things that probably like comes to mind first of like, some of the sketches that he did with him and Amy as couples, I like didn't really grasp as much, but now I feel like I'm turned around on them, enjoying them more. But I can't necessarily think of a specific character that I was super down on that became something like this. The Domingo situation is one of the more unique situations I've had as a fan of the show.
I am pulling for a season 50 reprisal of the Towel Guys if I'm looking for any Marcelo Hernandez character to be revived.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going through old episodes of yours, and you guys did mention how that one with Michael B. Jordan kind of came across as like if that was debuted in the 90s, there would have been like 20 different versions of it, and I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Yes. That was, I think, one of his first breakout moments that we got of Towel Guys. And I think like, given how I think Marcelo's having a fantastic season, I think that will be like always like a hidden gem. Like if there was the best of Marcelo DVDs coming out, I think that's on like the second or third DVD, but there's an argument that should be on the first one because it was so good to get to see him like finally break out in a way. So I wonder, and again, Michael B. Jordan was 11 episodes into the season. I wondered, talking about Emil Joachim and, Jane Wickline potentially. Ashley obviously got a chance to do one of her characters, but like getting some character work on the show, I wonder if we're going to get that at some point in the midpoint of the season.
And the fact that he was so early on into his first season when he did that, and the fact that he was able to play off of Keenan so well, like the dude's a natural. He's gonna do great things on and off the show.
So can I circle back on the Domingo stuff for a second? So
Yeah.
I want to, you brought up Domingo, and I knew we were going to get some Domingo questions tonight. So I want to bring in one question from @Chris.Binning, who asked, could Domingo's popularity lead him to be the first to spin off into a movie or series since MacGruber? So, like let's take this to like the nth degree here. We already saw that Domingo was brought back. It's already viral. People are using Domingo in 1 million TikToks now. So big question here is, will Domingo end up having other properties outside of the show itself? Obviously him appearing at a Sabrina Carpenter concert. Like, I mean, I don't know where it ends for Domingo. So Sammy, what do you think of that?
Hey, listen, as someone who watched the MacGruber Peacock show and enjoyed it immensely, I would love to see just more opportunities to bring the world of SNL to life, whether that is on Peacock as a series or a movie, probably preferably a movie, I guess, depending on the character. Is Domingo gonna do that? I don't think we're in the media landscape for something like that to happen, for a spin-off of this to happen. I honestly think where can Domingo go? Like, to answer that question, I think like the more realistic thing we'll see is a Super Bowl commercial where Marcelo Hernandez is Domingo, and maybe Sabrina Carpenter's there, maybe Chappell Roan's in there, maybe, some other. I really think like that could definitely happen, especially if we see Domingo a third time before February, which I don't think is, a crazy thing, depending on, what guests are in the building. So I think that is a more realistic thing we'll see than a movie or a show.
Dan, what's crazy is that like Domingo isn't even wasn't written, I don't think, as the star of the sketch. Like when in SNL history has a like third character, like let's say that the Kel Squad is the number or the A roles in this sketch, and that the couple played by Andrew and Chloe are the B roles in the sketch. Domingo was like the third on the sheet. Like he's not the focus of the sketch, but he's getting all the shine. And I cannot remember many sketches in SNL history where a sketch is so not written for that like person to drive it, and the person sitting in the back seat is the one that like ends up partying and getting all the benefits. It's really crazy. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, you have to imagine what the conversation amongst the writers the following week was when that sketch went mega viral. Because I remember listening to the Hot Take show right after, and the general consensus was like, well, just among, a couple of people was just like, that wasn't much. I appreciated Ariana Grande.
I will never live this down.
Oh no, like
I was on the right side of history.
I was Team John here. I was absolutely Team John here.
Yeah.
And then I'm not on TikTok, so it took me a little longer to realize how viral this went. And you guys mentioned it, and I was like, there's absolutely no way. And I looked it back up on YouTube and saw like the millions and millions of views it got. And there had to have been conversations around the writer's room at that point, like, okay, what do we do? We did not expect this. How do we push this forward without breaking the formula, considering we didn't know what the formula was to begin with?
So yesterday, I drove to Burlington, Vermont, and went to one of my favorite restaurants, the Olive Garden. And I went
for life.
And I was there with some friends, and I was talking to one of our friends, and I said to her, like, she's like, I love Domingo. She's not like a huge SNL fan, like checks out every now and then, but she's just like thinks Domingo's the funniest thing in the world. So I said, like, what do you truly find funny about it? Because I like that second sketch way more than the first one. And she was like, I don't know. She's like, I just think that the lyrics were so funny and the story was so great. And Domingo, like, I don't know, there's something about him, like with the bad boy character and stuff like that. Like he comes in all suave, and it's just like adds to, like, I just feel like all the roles are really well designed. And I don't know, it was just like, for some reason, it just didn't fully click with me on the first time. But after watching last week, I'm more on board due to the fact that I think, I think that how I feel about it a week out is that if you're like a real super fan of this show, the Charli XCX version of Domingo is going to be your thing, because the bad singing in that sketch is way better. So the actual sketch is better written. But if you are a very casual fan of the show, the bad singing to you adds to the sketch, so you will enjoy the Ariana Grande version more.
I like how the Charli XCX version of that sketch reaffirms what's already kind of implied in the first one, whereas like Domingo as a character is very, very well intentioned. Like there's not like a spiteful bone in his body. At the end, he's like, "Hey, Matt, come on, we can raise these kids together. We're a family now." Like there's no jealousy about him. There's no competition about him. He's just like, it's all love. Love is love.
Dan, it's been so great to speak to you. It sounds like one of the dogs is asking for you, so I will let you go. I will let you go, but
so
I do really appreciate. No, don't worry. It's
don't worry about
great.
it.
We love animals on the show. Yeah, we love dogs. We love cats. We love getting to see all the animals on the show. But seriously, I appreciate you listening and calling in. It's great to get to meet you, and I hope you will do it again soon. Anything else you would like to say about season 50? Are you feeling good?
I'm going to leave it there for now. Gentlemen, thank you so much for having me on. It is an honor. Oh, shout out to Dennis Perkins. I see he's on your network as well.
Love
as a part
Dennis.
of Late Nighter. Yeah, up until this show, he was my go-to recap guy, from the AV Club to Paste, now to LateNighter.com. Glad to see y'all are on the same team. And thank you guys so much again for having me on.
100%. We love Dennis. He's been on the podcast before, and hope you still get to read, and everybody gets to read his recaps of the show. He's awesome too. So appreciate you, Dan, and we'll see you. We will see you next time.
Till then, gentlemen.
See ya.
All right, Sammy K. Let's bring in a new friend also here for the first time. Very excited to meet so many new friends coming up on the show. It's not easy to do, so we gotta applaud when we get to meet new people coming in here and becoming new patrons of the show. So here we go. Let's keep things going with is it Nicola?
Nicola, yeah.
Nicola, so nice to meet you. Thanks for joining us.
Nice to meet you too. I don't know if you remember, John, but we also met at TIFF.
Oh wow, that is so fun.
Yeah.
Oh, you are okay. You're the one that we met. Okay, yes, of course I remember you. And now that you put the name to the face, so great to get to meet you again.
Yeah, of course. Nice to see you.
Yes. Okay. So maybe I should tell the story for the listeners. But basically, I was with James Stevens and Amanda Barkin, and we were walking towards the line to get into the premiere of Saturday Night. And Nicola was in the line, and I think you stopped us and you said like, "Love the podcast," and I was like, "Oh, thank you so." Like, it was really nice. Like, you know, when you're like out there in New York or whatever, and like, I don't know who's like, I could see the numbers, but like, I don't know who's listening beyond the people we get to talk to. Whenever somebody stops us, it is like so heartwarming. So I really appreciated you doing that. I know we got to chat a little bit afterwards as well. So it's great to get to see you again.
Yeah, great to see you. Great to see you both.
So
Yeah,
100%. Yeah, Sammy too. Sammy's awesome.
I'm here.
Nicola, how are you enjoying the season?
I'm definitely enjoying it a lot. I'm a pretty recent SNL viewer. I always watch like SNL adjacent things. My family loves Portlandia. And I started watching during COVID, which was a weird time to start. But I feel like I don't have a lot to base off of. But based off what I've watched, I am enjoying this season a lot. Also, I wasn't a person that really set my expectations too high for this season. So I haven't really felt left down by it.
Can you give me your Domingo thoughts, since you are a more recent viewer of the show?
Oh my gosh, yes. I'm also a Gen Z viewer. And as a Gen Z viewer,
Please tell
we
me.
get blamed for so much. And I don't know if this is me as a Gen Z like SNL fan, and if more like casual viewers or not even viewers of the show, just seen on TikTok, have a different take. But I was with you, John, at the Hot Take show. Like, Domingo, the first sketch was just not something that stood out to me from the night. There were other sketches I loved a lot more. So seeing it like skyrocket on TikTok was so crazy. I think it's a lot to do with it being a song, because another popular one is the Big Boys song that SZA did on the show.
That song was so good.
Yes, I do think like they're both fun songs. It's just I was really surprised by that was blowing up with my fellow Gen Zs.
So did you get into like debates with them about if this is a good sketch or not? Because I like to commiserate with other people.
I wasn't getting into debates with other Gen Zs because I'm afraid to start fights online,
Got it.
but
Okay.
I would go to my mother and say, I just can't believe these darn kids think Domingo's the funniest thing ever. I don't get it. And then he shows up on at Sabrina Carpenter. And I saw on Marcelo's Instagram, he posted his wig. And there were a bunch of comments being like, I can't believe he was wearing a wig. It's to show that time passed. He was wearing longer hair. And I'm like, guys.
Wow. It's so great. I mean, like, I think we're watching the show change right before our eyes, because like when we talk about how we define success at the show, it used to be like how many people watch the show on their PVRs or live, within 24 hours. And now it is truly like, what are the social media metrics? What is the average YouTube viewing, TikTok viewing, all of that stuff. So it is really fascinating that the show sort of looks at these moments that as successful for them, that they have something that can continue to carry it forward. So I definitely want to talk about that, because we got a couple questions about SNL ratings coming up. But Nicola, do you have any questions for Sammy and I off the bat about season 50 or anything you wanted to talk to us about?
Kind of to do with the Gen Z viewers and us getting blamed for the show's content. Do you think the show skews more Gen Z or more millennial in terms of its humor and what people are going to find funny? Because I know we have the TikTok sketches, but I don't know. What do you think?
Sam, you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately the show, still in the writer's room, I feel like the majority is probably millennial voices, but I do feel like we're seeing sort of this intersection point of like, I think when we first started podcasting, it was more millennial. And then I remember in the Elon Musk episode, we got the Gen Z hospital sketch. And that was like,
oh God, we get blamed for that one too, guys.
I mean,
It's all your
anything.
fault.
Yeah, you guys take credit for everything in the Elon Musk episode, right?
I'm so sorry for that.
But I feel like we are kind of at this point where I'm seeing like a real sort of even split as far as sort of the different style of humor. So I think we maybe are at this sort of point where we're going to start seeing it go sort of the Gen Z way. And that makes sense because you're seeing younger voices in the cast and in the writer's room. So.
Yeah, I think Lauren would say that it's a Gen Z show now because he likes to put out to the, the thesis or the idea that like this is a show for people in high school. And I definitely do support that. I just think that SNL's at a weird cross section in season 50 specifically, where a lot of people are coming back to the show after being gone for a few years in celebration of the show's history. So it's almost like they don't know if they need to fully lean into Gen Z yet, but I think we're on the precipice of it. I mean, looking it up, like, so Nicola, if you don't mind, what year were you born-ish?
So I was born in 2002, so I'm like right in the middle of the Gen Z era.
Yeah, so it seems like Gen Z 97 to 2012. So you're definitely like closer to the middle here. How many cast members themselves are born after 1997? So, Marcelo's born in 97, Emil is 98, and Jane is 99. But otherwise, all of the cast members are born before 97. So it's interesting that the show, and I think a lot of the writers, I think you would also say, are in that case where the show is just getting to the point now where they're actually hiring Gen Z cast members. So it's really built like a show for millennials, but now they're starting to pivot to the point where they're making sketches that are more Gen Z. So I think whenever you do get that sometimes on SNL, the show can feel a little inauthentic at points. And like if this was a show that was run by Marcelo and Emil and Jane, who are all born in the late 90s, perhaps we would feel like these sketches would be coming more from their voices. And I wonder if that is what we will see in, seasons 52, 53, 54, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Nicola, do you want to answer a couple questions with us?
Of course.
All right, so let's take this question here. Let's talk about this one from Mason. Mason says, Keenan is an SNL icon, but it seems like he's pulling back a bit. If you had to guess right now, do you think Keenan will exit the show at the end of this historic season 50? And if so, how should the show say goodbye to him? So what do you think about Keenan's role on the show right now? So Keenan has been in officially through 7 episodes, has been in 19 sketches. That is lower than Heidi, Ego, Chloe, Bowen, Andrew, James, Sarah, and Emil tied with Marcelo.
Wow.
Now. So really low down the list here. We have not seen a lot of Keenan Thompson in the show. Is this, a guy who's headed off into retirement? What are your predictions right now for Keenan?
Me first?
Nicola. Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead. Go ahead.
I should have asked Keenan. I saw him in 30 Rock once, and that was cool. But I think, I don't know, Gen Z viewer here, I think that Keenan, or what I've heard, is that he's kind of just happy to be in the show and happy to be used in sketches. Like, just put me in a hot dog cart man, I'll do the role for it. And so I don't think he's necessarily getting bored of being on the show. It's just that he's understands that they need to highlight new talent. And I don't know if he would leave at the end of 50, but we'll see.
Sammy, what do you think?
Yeah, I think here the numbers don't lie. I do feel like there definitely is an effort to kind of utilize him less. And I think this is kind of sort of what we saw with Daryl Hammond towards the end of his run on the show, just like really just bringing him in for some impressions and things like that. He really, was not a huge part of the show. And I think just the fact that we're kind of everything's aligning to where he's been on the show for 20 years. That's a record that will never be broken, I think. And then, with SNL 50, I just think the stars are kind of aligning to where if there's any time for him to kind of exit, this really feels like the right time, now. But he's also, continued to, blow past these sort of expectations of him and continue to stay. So you never know.
Yeah, look, I think he's in his right if he decides that he wants to keep going at the show. But it's also like a little bit of like, why are you still there? Like, what is the purpose if you're not going to be Keenan, right? Like, he could be Keenan in a sketch once a night, but that to me is sort of like a cameo, and it would sort of make more sense at a certain point for him to, go off and do other projects and then come back to the show every now and then and appear in the show, and we get excited that Keenan's there. I think Lorne has said, and some of the cast members have reiterated that, like, we can't appreciate you unless we miss you first. And I do think that, Keenan, who had a really great late surge to his career the last few years, is now on a point where we're sort of getting him so minimally that it almost like defeats the purpose of having him there in the first place. So I think this would truly be a great time for him to go, and we'll celebrate him, for the icon that he is on the show. And then my hope is that whatever comes next, we will, have some other great cast members that will end up staying and, honoring his legacy at the show. Like, he's truly built one. So for me, I'm cool with this being it for Keenan, but we shall see. I think that will truly make it feel like a changing of the guard if he decides to leave at the end of season 50.
Yeah.
Nicola, has there been? Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say Keenan's like Gen X, so he's not even millennial. So like, the fact that we still have that sort of, era of people on the show, that will signify, sort of the next generation.
Yeah, he was the first one hired, I think, after the show began.
Yeah.
So now we're talking about cast member. Like, we're going to have the first cast member born in 2000 at some point soon. It's, it just feels like it might be time. Nicola, anything else you want to say about this season? Any favorite episodes or favorite moments?
My favorite episode was definitely Ariana Grande, I think. Maybe it's because I love musicals and I wasn't really put off by the fact that there was so much singing in the episode. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of Domingo, that did come up as my favorite episode of the season. I also love Chappell, and I also wanted to share my sweater because Ian got to share his shirt.
Oh, nice.
And it's flipped. I just realized it's flipped, but it says it's the logo.
No, we can see it well.
Yeah, okay, I see it. Yeah.
It's nice. The logo from the 15th and 20th season because I'm a graphic designer, so I'm a nerd about SNL logos. And I really love...
There's a shirt with like all the logos. Did you see that one?
I saw that. I think it's interesting. And I'm a big fan of the flash of all the logos at the beginning of the title. But yeah.
That is a great shirt. Also, I love your microphone as well. Do you podcast yourself?
I don't. But I started college in the great month of September 2020, so I kind of got a mic for that, for all the Zoom classes. So that's why I have it.
Big coincidence. We started our podcast at the same time. So
Good time to
yes, I
start
feel
a
like a lot of
podcast.
people. Yeah, a great time to start a podcast, and we're still going. So, Nicola, great to get to speak to you. Thank you so much for supporting our show and coming on. And next time I see you in person, you have to say hi again.
Of course.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
Thank
So
you.
we'll be in touch soon. Thanks, Nicola. Bye.
Bye.
Great talking.
All right, Sammy, are you ready? We got a big name coming up right now.
Oh,
So
big name. Who's it going to be? Is it the host? Is it the host of the December 14th episode?
No, it is not, but that may come up sometime soon. So let's bring in the man, the myth, the legend. Casey Killingsworth is on the show with us. Casey, what's going on?
Hey, how's it going? Good to see you guys, John and Sammy again. Love the sweater, Sammy, and
thank you.
Things have been going great. How have you guys been?
I've been doing really well, just grinding through this SNL season. So it was I'm sure as good as it was for the SNL cast and crew to have the week off, it was really nice for the SNL podcasters to just get a little bit of a break and let my mind clear from the show. So I'm excited to be on with you guys tonight and talk about the season. So Casey, how are you feeling about season 50 now that we've been through the Mulaney, Burr, and Charli XCX episodes?
I'm feeling that the show is I'm feeling it's closer to the place it needs to be, not maybe an ideal place, but it's getting there. I feel like now that we're in November's a big sweeps month. SNL season 50 does feel like the event that the show wants it to be, if not the event that the show needs it to be. And I say that because it seems like they managed to get the audience they want, especially for this month with Mulaney hosting the big election show. And that's really what it was. It was a solid episode, one of the better ones of the season, just more an election show than a Mulaney episode with lots of unique humor that he helped cultivate. And Bill Burr had a lot of solid moments too, comedically. It was a little bit refreshing to, they could have picked a worse host than him for that election week, but it was just a little refreshing to not have it be, one of those weeks where, there's a somber opening and Lauren thinks, well, we need to help the nation heal now. And even if their approach is just like, well, here we are again.
Let me jump in there, Casey, because I want to know from you, you've seen the way that SNL has handled a lot of, call it, difficult moments over the last couple of decades. How do you feel like they did with that moment versus, some of the others?
I'm glad that they tried to pull some satire out of it. It reminded me of something that the show Fridays did in 81, right before Reagan got inaugurated, and the show Almost Live did it in around 94 when there was a Republican Congress. It's just a satirical, sarcastic take on this is how we're going to change the show to conform to a new conservative direction the country's heading. But I do agree with something our friend Andrew Dick tweeted, saying that they should have been angrier in that moment than trying to play it up and be cute and here's how
I could not disagree more with our friend
mockingly kiss up to Trump and Elon. But yeah, Burr was, he had some solid moments in kind of an off week for even the country, not just the show. But I will say, I feel that the Charli XCX episode was overhated, and I know your take, John. I kind of respect your take, and that you may not have thought it was a great show, but Charli was a great host, and she had the right energy. She brought the right vibe to the show, even if you didn't think she brought the right audience. She bought what the show needed, and in terms of energy and stuff. And it's just the biggest problems that they rehashed a bunch of sketch premises from, the last time they did this. Kyle Mooney was on, and you realize that when you see he cameoed for seemingly no reason, but and yeah, they pot back to Mingo way too soon. I could see why they had to do it, just because they're bringing in young pop stars that the young people on TikTok like, but I think it's too soon. And like I said, if they want to, go viral on TikTok, I mean, they have Jane Wickline, have her, work with some writers and grow something organically that a TikTok audience would like, instead of just, trying to force something that happened to be a trend that made it big. You can only ride that wave so much. But, I mean, Charli was a great host. It's just that I had a better time with her episode because I feel like I went into it with the right mindset that, given her audience, I may not be the target audience for things like, the It Girl Thanksgiving or the Wicked or the Shrek things. Like, I'm not like a huge Broadway theater geek, so some of that stuff's not going to land with me. And I'm not someone who follows a lot of high fashionista stuff, so that was largely, well, I can't be mad at a sketch that gave us Sarah Sherman as Rachel Sennett, but I mean, I had to accept that parts of it were not for me and just appreciate it for, what it was. And I mean,
and by the way, my feeling is like, I don't care if sketches are not for me. Like, not every SNL sketch, like there's nobody out there that every SNL sketch is for them. Like, you'd have to have like the most ridiculous range and interests. I think it's gonna end this. Every SNL sketch is you.
No, the sports sketches are not for me.
Yeah, exactly, right. But I'm sure you like sports sketches where there's like at least a baseline of explaining what the sketch is. So like for you, you're like, okay, I could wrap my head around what they're going for here. But the show should never feel like they're presenting a segment in the show that if you don't get it, then you have to skip past this. Like, that's what some of the stuff felt like. So for me, like, I don't think that I think that if you are totally tapped in, you love the Charli XCX episode because the sketches were for you, and also Charli was great. And if you're not tapped in, just Charli was great. So she ends up elevating a lot of material that felt like a lot of retreads given how many weeks they've been in the studio this fall. So I'm right there with you, Casey, on all of this. Casey, did you have any questions for Sammy or I, by the way, about the season so far? Anything you want to talk about?
No, but I just like to make a couple points, unpack Charli's
Sure,
episode
go for it.
a bit more. I mean, I don't think it was as bad as like the Gene Smart episode, or as disappointing as like Michael Keaton's newest ones. People are saying that's kind of not a hack take, but I don't agree with it. I see Charli's episode as like it was like a more successful version of the experiment that they tried 2 seasons ago when Megan Thee Stallion hosted, because that was an episode that felt strange. I kind of panned it in my blog, but it felt off because they tried to craft the entire show around her image to the point where it felt like you were watching a lost sketch pilot that she had. But with Charli, yeah, they had an easier time crafting the show, not just to her image, but to her fans, because she, she's obviously friends with some of the people that work within the show. So they were able to craft something of a labor of love for just that Venn diagram of her fans and SNL fans. So if you watch the show for the ensemble, you would have enjoyed it for what it was, like I said. And that's what I thought. Just not a hot take, just a lukewarm take. That people just kind of reacted a little too strongly to that in the moment. But
I like the comparison because I do think that a lot of the best hosts in SNL history have brands, like whether it's as something as specific as Megan Thee Stallion and like who her personality is, or it is one of the greats of all time in, when you're talking about, Baldwin or Steve Martin or Justin Timberlake, when you see them come to the show, you sort of know what a JT episode is going to look like, what a Steve Martin episode is going to look like. So in theory, it makes sense with some of the double duty hosts to that if they already have established brands outside the show, to then bring them into the show and make the show feel very like the Megan Thee Stallion show or the Charli XCX show. But I think that what you run into a problem is that there's not enough of a baseline for us to get to know these people on the show to then be able for us to buy into everything that they're showing us for that hour and a half. So I think Megan Thee Stallion leaned into it probably even more than Charli. Like with Meg, we didn't get the moments that we got. Like did we have like with Here I Go with the digital short, like, that to me was a great moment of, though, even if it wasn't with a current cast member, of Charli completely buying into the process of SNL. And because of that, I think it really rewards our viewing of that show versus Megan. So I love the comparison. I think it's really interesting here. Casey, I want to ask you one question that got sent in from our listeners, if that's okay. I would love to know from you. This one comes in from Monette, who says, late night and SNL are in a bit of a post-election rating slump. While possibly not correlated for people's taste in comedy about the incoming administration, what, if anything, should SNL do with the topical comedy and the cold opens to win back viewers if hosts and musical guests aren't going to be the big draw? So that's been a little bit of our talk lately about ratings and SNL, and definitely they have gone down since the election. So anything that SNL can do to bring them back up since we're now in the post-election swing?
I mean, one thing, I would suggest, and this has been, batted around quite a bit, is like, maybe they should back away from doing politics right in the cold open. And I can see them doing that because they got to get right to that's what people tune in for. I mean, if you're older and stuck with a show, you'll want to see that, and maybe watch Weekend Update and go to bed. But we also live in an era when if that's what you want from SNL, then that's just what you're going to read about online. You'll go to whatever news source you have, and they'll say, this is what SNL did. And you can just watch these individual clips. So just maybe structure the show so that like the cold open, whatever it is, if it's not political or cultural, whatever it is just very quick and like almost blackout and just keeps the energy up. And then maybe save the, political stuff. If it's longer and more in depth, save that for at least after the monologue or for Weekend Update. I mean, just because, most people do watch the show online in segments doesn't mean they have to completely abandon the conceit that a live show should be constructed and structured so that, it grabs you in early with, the right pacing and energy up top. And then just, maybe peters out a little toward the end when people fall asleep. So, just restructure the stuff so that, the political stuff's in the middle of the show where if you're not interested, it's easy to tune out, and just, at least can find as much of it as possible to Weekend Update. And then if you really want SNL's political takes, just, look for them online, and whatever they actually do with political stuff, they'll cross that bridge when they come to it. They'll figure it out based on what's in the news that comes along. They always do.
Sammy, I want to go to you on this, but I also want to mention that Ken also sent in a question that's very similar. So Ken says, I've seen articles about the drops on CNN and MSNBC about the ratings post-election. Given the underperforming numbers for SNL's own post-election episode, do you think SNL has also been affected? If so, do you think this will make them reconsider having lengthy political cold opens every week? Do you think they should reconsider or stay with their current format? So, obviously there has been a little bit of a change in the ratings for SNL, but I do have have the numbers in front of me just so we can parse through them. So the number 1 rated episode in season 50 was the John Mulaney episode where Kamala did appear. That came in at a 6.586. So that's 6.5 million who watched the show linearly between, the show airing and 24 hours after. The 6th and 7th rated shows this season, so the bottom 2 right now, are Bill Burr and McGee at 4.424, and then Charli XCX is the lowest at 4.286. That is the lowest we have had this season. So your thoughts, Sammy?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's such like a macro problem, it like the question said, it's like affecting MSNBC and like CNN and like all these other things. I think everyone was so locked into the election that obviously SNL sees a bump during the election year. So it's obviously there's going to be a drop off. I think a lot of people are just kind of taking this time to sort of just disconnect from politics. At least I feel like I've kind of been doing that, and just focus on the holidays. I do really feel like once the inauguration comes around, and it's kind of more a reality that people are going to be more plugged in, and I think people will be more plugged in to see what SNL has to say about all this. But yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I think Casey, yeah, that's a great point. I mean, if you look at the history of the show, not everything had to be a political cold open. It's interesting, like how many times we saw Trump, even before he was the nominee, over these last couple seasons in the cold opens. But it's because you have somebody like James Austin Johnson in the building who does such a good job that I think I don't think the show's going to change. So I think it is more of a macro problem, and I honestly don't know the answer to how to correct for that, other than I think some time will help some people, and then they'll tune back in to see what SNL's take is in the new year.
John, you muted yourself a bit.
Sorry, guys. Thank you. That was a rookie move. If I think that if you ask the executives at the show, they feel that booking Bill Burr for the post-election show was a mistake, and it's not because of anything that he said on the show or his performance. I actually, in fact, think he was a pretty good host in the sketches. I just believe that they, if they had known or predicted that the election would go the way that it did, I think they would have changed course and booked a different headliner. I don't know that Chappell would have been the right answer, but I do think somebody who, was more in tune with politics, I think maybe as a viewer, you would have been like, I'm sick of it, I don't want to hear it. But from a ratings perspective, I think that people would have tuned in to hear what that person has to say, whether it was Seth Meyers or even another alumni that could have given, maybe more opinions in their monologue than the brief one that we got, sort of surprisingly from Bill Burr. I just think ended up being like, I think a lot of things came together in a very weird way this week. And I think given the rating that they got for this one, like I said, a 4.424, whereas in season 46, with the election results being announced earlier that day, Dave Chappelle's episode comes at a 9.064. So literally more than double the amount of people watched Saturday Night Live the week of the election results in 2020 versus 2024. They cannot be happy with what they had there. All right, Casey, any other final thoughts as we thank you for joining us here tonight?
Well, it's a pleasure. And I just like to close up by saying, it may seem November is always a strange month because it's a sweeps month. And it's just, that's when they always go for just big personalities. And lately it's like they go for like here's a host of musical guests that'll be a big hit with like the most annoying 21-year-old white girl, That was a recurring gag on Twitter these past couple of years. But yeah, once they get past the sweeps in November and just the shakiness of October, when we get into December, that's usually when seasons, get turned around, new people break out. And maybe Jane and Emil could, really establish themselves, and maybe we could get a beat on who Ashley is as a performer. And yeah, I'm really excited to see who the other two hosts of December are going to be whenever they announce those. And I'm sure that.
Do you want to take a guess?
maybe one alumni. That's as much as I can guess, but hopefully it'll be someone who can, bring
There
the
will be
show
there
to
will be an
new-
alumni on December 14th. I can tell you that.
Oh, okay. I mean, I have one idea who that might be. And, maybe the 21st will have just a big bring it on home guest that'll really, keep morale up that week and just help them push them over to Christmas. And yeah, December is when things usually get turned around, especially in a new era. So I'm expecting a lot from December. And yeah, that's where I see the show right now.
Perfect. Well, Casey, thank you so much for joining us. Always great to catch up with you, and looking forward to chatting with you after the next cycle.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks for having me on, and good to see you guys again. And I just have a couple quick things, like one plug and one small tease.
Go for
it. So I'm still going to be reviewing the show for my blog every week, and I'll post links to that on my socials, mainly Twitter, Discord, or X, Discord, Threads, and Blue Sky. And I did happen to catch a bit of our friend Deej earlier, and I would like to confirm her announcement that I will be her co-host on our new Bill Hader focused podcast. And yeah, we haven't really recorded anything yet. We're still in the early planning stages of figuring things out. I mean, we have concepts of a plan of what episodes 1, 2, and 4 might be. No idea what 3 would be yet, but we're, still figuring things out. And I'd like to thank you, John, because I couldn't have gotten that far without you having me on. And yeah, and I'm looking forward to that too. So when we actually get that going, we start putting it out there, I'll definitely keep all you guys posted on our new Bill Hader podcast.
Please do. That's very kind of you, Casey. I look forward to hearing it. And thank you so much for joining us tonight. So appreciate you, buddy.
You're
all
welcome.
right. Thanks, Casey.
Night.
We will
Happy
talk to you soon. All right. Let's bring in our next patron coming into the show here tonight. And again, meeting a new friend this time. Joining us for the first time on the Saturday Night Network is Isaiah. Isaiah, what's up, man?
Hi, how you doing? It's good to meet you guys.
Good.
Yeah, good to meet you.
Thank you so much. Great to meet you. How are you enjoying season 50? And thanks for joining us on the show tonight.
I'm enjoying it. I'm liking it a lot. I'm a little surprised. I thought, I guess just because of the 50, I was thinking a little too big, but because I'm kind of surprised how normal the show is kind of going as a regular season. So it kind of makes me think about I mean, you kind of teased that there'll be an alumni next and on the 14th, but it was just kind of making me think they must be going really, really big for that special episode. And that's what I'm kind of hoping for.
I definitely feel like that's part of it. The reason why we weren't getting some of the really big names hosting in the fall here is because they're probably saving them for some really big moments in February. So that makes sense here. Isaiah, where are you calling us from?
I'm from the Bay Area. I'm in Oakland.
Oh, wonderful. So coming us from the West Coast. And how did you become a fan of SNL and find the podcast?
I was probably a fan of SNL back, I think it was around high school, my senior year. So probably around 2010, I just kind of started watching it. I don't remember what pulled me to it. I think it might have been, definitely was a Lonely Island sketch. And then I just kind of started watching,
seeing them on the show.
Yeah, it showed up on Netflix. Went back and just picked episodes where I liked whoever the host was. Started kind of watching it, and then a couple weeks ago, me and my wife went to go see Saturday Night, and I just wanted to see the BTS interviews, and I ended up running into one of the recaps of the seasons. And nice. I'm like, oh, this
very
is
cool.
This is kind of neat.
That's awesome.
And then I kind of found the other blogs and stuff, so that's how it got me to you guys.
That's really awesome. So how are you feeling about season 50? Do you have any questions or things that you want to talk about from the season with Sammy and I?
I was tuning in and out while I was getting home because I was on I was concerned I was gonna be a little late because I'm on a carpool and I wasn't driving today from work. But so I was tuning in and out while I was listening, and I did have kind of one of the things you guys were talking about, double duties and all that, and I felt like they might have done it before. I'm unsure. You guys would have to remind me, but would Andy Samberg and the Lonely Island count as a double duty?
Definitely.
Yeah. And I was wondering
Yeah, if they like hosted and the Lonely Island was the
If
musical
Andy
guest, then
Samberg
yes.
was the host and the Lonely Island was the musical guest, and I kind of thought like that would be a cool double duty, but I feel like that kind of was just that's a 50th anniversary episode kind of thing.
Isaiah, I just want to say when we were talking about the double duty stuff earlier, I don't know why the first time that ever crossed my mind, and I didn't say it, was like, yeah, there should be an Andy Samberg Lonely Island episode. That like, why hasn't that happened yet? So it's funny that you had that same thought.
Yeah.
Well,
Also,
I don't know that the Lonely Island has ever performed live on the show before. So, it would be like a very like unique format change that instead of a musical guest, it was like, ladies and gentlemen, the Lonely Island, then it went to a digital short instead of them performing on the musical stage.
But they've gone on tour before. So like, they can just perform.
Yeah.
And they're about to have a new album out. So
yeah, I would love it as like a live thing just because another question I had for you guys, because maybe you guys would know.
Well,
and
so
before you
get to that, let me just say, Isaiah, because I just want to, I know listeners will be yelling at us if I don't answer this correctly, but this has happened in the history of the show before. So, there's Donald Glover and Childish Gambino, Garth Brooks and Chris Gaines. And then in season 8 of the show, Lily Tomlin hosted and sort of performed as this like alternate version of Lily Tomlin called Purvis Hawkins. So it has happened a few times in the history of the show, and it, who knows if it would ever happen again. So I apologize. Please continue with your question.
No, yeah, the Lily Tomlin thing is kind of what made me think of that, just because I actually started going back and watching the even older stuff because I had never gotten around to it before, and I never realized how much they kind of bend like what a musical guest was, or like the host kind of did it, or just I came across one episode. I can't remember who was the host. I already forgot, but the musical guest was just like these young girls that were doing a lip syncing performance and not really like kind of singing like I can't remember what the song was, but it kind of didn't, to me, it was just like, okay, I guess this is like the musical guest slot where someone mentioned it earlier too on this stream that they'll even use just a stand-up instead of a music. There wouldn't even be any musical performers. So it started to make me kind of think of just like, oh, I guess the Lonely Island would kind of fit that. And I would like to see it live rather than a digital short, just because it would be kind of nice to see them in that environment. Even if their live performance was kind of like this like medley of all of their like classic hits, and that was like kind of the performance, just to do something kind of that you've never really kind of seen before, or that you're not used to, like you would expect a pre-roll and it's not.
Yeah, definitely. You had another question for us, so I just want to make sure we get to it. So what was the other thing you want to talk about?
The other question was, has there ever been kind of sketches, because like a lot of this talk about like Domingo and where it goes and bringing stuff back, has there ever been a case where a sketch started in one format and changed into another when it came back, like something that started as live and then turned into a pre-tape, or was a pre-tape and then they did like a live version of it?
Sure, definitely. I think that, a couple good examples or more recent examples are a couple of years ago in the John Mulaney Five Timers Club sketch. Right before that, there was a Please Don't Destroy pre-tape, and it faded out, and they were watching the pre-tape in the Five Timers Club. And that's one of those things that I think like always really works to transition and is exciting from the show whenever they do that. So I think that's happened a few times over the decades. If we were being very like nitpicky and specific about the answer, there's a lot of live sketches that have pre-taped elements to them where they'll show like a pre-tape as a transition point to literally get people from one stage to another. So it's definitely happened. I would say that they've become mostly less experimental with their formatting in the last, call it 20 or so years. But I wish they would try these things more, like going back to our talk about double duty or this. Like, I think that, I wish they would try it. I do wonder if that will be a post Lorne Michaels thing when some new person comes in and says like, let's just try different things every single week. Yeah. Do you want to help us answer a question, Isaiah?
Yeah, please.
All right, let's do it. All right, so let's take this question from Ken, who asks, in the last few years, live sketches seem to go more viral than pre-tapes. Lonely Island bumping PDD off of the live show lineup last week rather than finding anywhere for it in the lineup almost feels like an admission to him that they are unsure of the state of their current pre-tapes. Once Andy is gone again, how do you think SNL will handle pre-tapes? What changes, if any, would you make to the show's current pre-tape format? So obviously we just talked a little bit about pre-tapes. specifically here, Ken is wondering, what SNL can do to increase the virality of some of their pre-tapes, like during the Lonely Island's peak. So Isaiah, do you have an opinion on this?
It's always funny because one of the reasons I really like SNL is because I went into like my career like into media, like production and all that, and I actually started with like television broadcast, like and all that. So I really appreciated the show for a lot of the way that they just run it. Like I just loved, like I was just like, it would be my dream to just sit in the control room and just like watch an episode like get produced and stuff. And I really always loved
our
that
friend
aspect.
James Stevens, who you saw in those Everything You Need to Know videos. He actually got to watch an episode from the control room or
that's awesome.
rehearsal a couple years ago, and he said it was like the greatest experience of his life.
Yeah, every time they'll share the set move, like from the cold open to the monologue, I'll watch every single one whenever they post it on YouTube. And so coming from that, I always prefer more live sketches than pre-tapes, just because I just kind of like to see the show kind of live in its like live format. In terms of that, I guess like I feel like if the way my memory serves, I feel like it's always kind of been a little too more like commercial heavy, like when they do like pre-tape commercial like humor and stuff. And I don't know if like cutting that will allow more room for kind of just these more like the pre-tapes that we want to expect, like PDD or like Lonely Island. Because I remember when we were watching, when me and my wife were watching that episode where they both showed like where they said there was going to be a Please Don't Destroy video, and then a SNL digital short popped up. I was like, oh wow, we're gonna have like both of them like in this episode. That's kind of crazy. And then as it never showed up, and as it never showed up, I thought like, were they telling us that the Allstate commercial was the PDD sketch? Like, because I know that was like a real commercial, and so I'm like, was that like the inside gag? But then I saw the it was meet cute, right? That was mean cute.
Yeah, that was it was cut for time. It wasn't cut at dress.
Yeah.
So because of that, it had intended to be at the second half of the show, and it wasn't. And it is a really fascinating thing that we could probably do a whole hour on, which is like why SNL chose to prioritize the digital short over PDD, who they have in house. But I guess Andy being an alumni, them working very hard on it, them having Charli XCX record this music video. You obviously can't show the Lonely Island thing, in another episode. So I think like I sort of agree, if you had to pick one, that was the right decision. But it does really show sort of like the pecking order right now, which is like, let's prioritize stuff from alumni and perhaps what we think will go more viral. Sammy, did you want to give your 2 cents on all this?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that, we've kind of lost a lot of the sort of musical talent on the show that we had over the last couple of years. I mean, the Chris Redd, Pete Davidson rap sort of music videos we would get a couple of years ago. Like, I feel like those are the type of things that, have a good chance of going viral if you have involved music with it. And I feel like, I guess we're seeing a lot more music and live sketches. Obviously, the Domingo sketch is a great example of that. So, I'm not sure exactly what they should do. I think there was a time where you could argue that the live sketches were kind of, suffering, and the pre-tapes are kind of like the saving grace of certain episodes. And, as a fan of live sketch comedy, I'm glad that things have kind of leveled out back to where we're getting a lot, very interesting live sketches. But yeah, I mean, I would love to see more pre-tapes. I think they're on the right track with obviously PDD, even though we're seeing less of them, but also, a lot of the viral sketches a couple of seasons ago, you have a writer whose voice is so strong and distinct, like a Julio Torres. Obviously, his sketches, Papyrus, those went super viral. So I think they're on the right track with the sort of the SNL midnight matinees. I know we've only gotten two of those at this point, but I think just continue finding writers that can really translate their humor into the pre-tapes. It's kind of simple as that.
I totally forgot about the short films that we've kind of been getting in this, like the monkey one with John Mulaney and stuff. That's also kind of piling on top of like the pre-tapes.
Yeah, I wonder. I wonder if they're just trying to get a new voice in there with getting Dan Bula, even though he's been on the show a long time, to get his, pre-tape style into the show. I do think it's been a while. I mean, obviously PDD being on the show so sparingly is a little bit jarring for us who've seen them the last few seasons, but it's also been a while since we've had a PDD sketch go completely viral. So I do wonder, what the future of pre-tapes on the show looks like. And they're definitely experimenting at this point. At this point, I would also say that 3 of my personal favorite sketches from the season are pre-tapes in the 2 digital shorts and My Best Friend's House. So for me, I still think that they're really good, but as far as why live sketches continue to go viral, like Lisa from Temecula or Beavis and Butthead, or in this case, this season, Domingo, it's really hard to figure that one out. There's some secret sauce there that we'll keep exploring as we go and talk about them week to week. So Isaiah, thanks so much for joining us tonight and giving us your opinion on everything. Anything else you would like to say tonight?
Yeah, sorry, I wanted to tack on one last quick question to you guys regarding
Sure.
the Lonely Island stuff. Do you think it's safe to assume that all the SNL digital short labels we'll get this season are going to be Lonely Island videos? Because SNL digital short also meant stuff outside of Lonely Island, correct? Because I thought stuff like Dear Sister and there was another one I had in my head and I forgot. They were labeled SNL digital short.
Yeah, so I
Correct.
think SNL Digital Shorts had at least one of the 3 guys as a writer on them.
Yeah.
So they weren't always Andy Samberg related music videos. They could have been sketches that were either Yorma or Kiva written when they were on the show. And actually, I believe that the original SNL Digital Short title was an Adam McKay thing when he was he was finished being a head writer at the show. And then in his last couple seasons writing, he was producing these short films and called them SNL Digital Shorts. And I think that the Lonely Island guys really liked that. So I would be pretty surprised if we ever saw an SNL Digital Short come up and it didn't include the Lonely Island or Andy as, doing some sort of music related thing, just because it's become so synonymous with them at this point that it would feel disappointing to the viewers if we just got a random sketch that was called an SNL Digital Short.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I'm hoping it teases them a
but-
Lonely Island live performance on the 50th or something.
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait to see what they're going to do for that, for sure. So we will get into that over the next few months. But thank you so much for talking to us, coming home from work and jumping on. It's really great to get to meet you, and I appreciate your support of the show.
No, yeah, thanks. It's great too. I'm actually going to New York next week for a vacation.
Okay,
Nice.
well,
Yeah.
that's awesome. There's no SNL next week, but in a couple
No,
of weeks,
sorry, it'll be that weekend for the Paul Mescal one. The 7th,
nice.
right? Yeah.
You're
cool. Are you
gonna
gonna do the
try to
line?
do standby?
I tried to, but it is my first time ever in New York, and I looked it up, and I'm going with another couple, so I'm just it would be too much to kind of to try to power through the line, but
Sure.
hopefully I'll be able to catch
Yeah,
it
it's
if
a
I'm
lot.
tired one day in the hotel.
We'll have a blast. Visit the NBC store, buy some merch. That's always a good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely want to see 30 Rock, so it'll be
Yeah,
good.
the studio tour
Okay,
is
well,
cool.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it
Thanks.
definitely is. Enjoy it. Don't be a stranger, and we will talk soon, Isaiah. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Bye.
see ya.
All right, Sammy, let's keep rolling. Let's bring in our friend Michael is here. Michael, how's it going?
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we
All
can
right,
hear you great.
awesome.
Michael, have we ever spoken before? You look so familiar.
I'm on the Discord.
That's
Once upon a time, I wrote an essay that I did for a storytelling show. I'm in Chicago. I do a lot of the live lit storytelling things, and I did a piece on Saturday Night Live. I guess Valentine's Day of 2022. The theme of the night was "Why I Can't Quit You," and so I did it all about SNL. And I reached out to you, John, about a little fact checking for that essay. So. Yeah, I asked about Gail Mathias, and so it was just a random fact check, but
well, I hope it went well.
Yeah, no, it was great. It went really well, and I guess I could kind of follow up on some of the stuff I wrote about, but yeah.
Okay,
So
well, super nice to get to meet you finally face to face, and thanks so
Likewise.
much for your support of the show. Is there anything that you want to talk about tonight? Any questions you have for Sammy or I, or your thoughts on season 50 in
Yeah,
general?
just what struck me just listening to Nicola earlier in the Gen Z conversation. I turned 50 myself last month, so my age and the season number have been the same since the beginning, you know, and that essay that I wrote, the story I wrote was kind of about that and tracking my life at, you know, SNL and, you know, just and all of that. And so yeah, you know, the first live show I ever remember watching was the season 11 premiere with Madonna, because I was obsessed with her, and I think my friend and I fell asleep. We didn't make it through. So I'm from Detroit, so I was on Eastern time, and
Oh, nice.
yeah, Sammy, I think you're
yeah. I'm in Detroit right now. Ferndale.
awesome. Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you know, high school was Wayne's World, season 17, you guys just did on the Everything You Know. That was my senior year. So, you know, so just kind of thinking about the Gen X, you know, kind of side of the coin. And I know you guys are kind of in the middle of Nicola and I, but yeah, just thinking
Well,
about.
how have you been enjoying this season? You know, given what you're saying, like, do you feel like there are moments that you're like, this isn't really for me and my generation anymore, or
Some
does
of
it still
it,
click for you?
but I haven't really missed an episode except for one in the last decade plus. I mean, I've been watching it for years, you know, but like religiously.
I have to ask, which was the one?
He was a president. He's going to be a president.
Nice.
Like, nah, I'm done. But yeah, you know, so I've been, and like, again, I just can't, you know, I just can't quit it. And so I don't, I feel like it's like, it's an anchor, and you know, it's a guidepost. And, you know, I really loved Jason Sudeikis' monologue, you know, and he was just like, you know, think about, you know, you're here, right here, and, you know, just think about all the history. And so, like, you know, and here's my merch from the NBC store from when I took the tour in 1997. And
Nice.
I passed by Molly Shannon's dressing room and fanboyed. You know, so I haven't seen the show live, which is definitely a dream, but at least I got to peer through the window through the studio and look into it.
You got to make sure that you get to do that one day. So, you know, Michael, I got to ask you, since you've seen so much of the show and like you said, you just can't quit it. How do you feel like season 50 has compared to you? Like, are you enjoying this era, this season, and what we've been getting in this special anniversary season?
I love the energy of the new cast. I really like Emil. I think one of my favorite lines of his was in the Shrek sketch where there's like, oh, you're pretty quiet. And he's like, yeah, I'm the one straight guy with 3 girls and a gay guy. Of course I'm like, so I got a kick out of that. I really like Jane. I like her vibe. And then Ashley, I think it was Bill the other day said she kind of had like a Nancy Walls and a guest star vibe. And I was like, yeah, like I dig that. And so I'm excited. I'm a big fan of James Austin Johnson. You know, he's, I got to see his show, not this past summer, but the summer before. So I have my picture with him and his strike beard. He was really shaggy since with the writer's strike. Yeah,
Cool.
and I just love seeing them, and I just love seeing all the fun things that they do. And if it's not all for me, that's okay. I think this was the first auditions pre-tape where I was like, I don't know who everybody is that they're doing.
Yeah, it's a big mindfuck when that stuff starts happening. So, but Michael, do you want to answer a question with us right now?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, so this one comes in from @it's_Benjamin_LeBaron, who wanted to know what is the strongest episode of the season so far and why. So it seems like, you know, we've been going through and asking some of our you know, listeners who called in tonight that they felt like the Ariana Grande was the strongest for them. How do you feel? Do you have a pick that's the same or different?
Yeah, you know, I did think about how I'd order them. I have Ariana at number 2. You know, I'm not a big fan. Like, her music's like, her pop music it's just not my jam. But like, I was pleasantly surprised at just her, you know, just her comedic, you know, capabilities, and just she was great in all the sketches, and I really loved it. So I definitely put it up there. I have Nate's at the top spot for me, and then I have Bill's at number 3 from this last run. So that was kind of where I have my top three. Nate just has that great vibe. You know, the Washington sketches are amazing. I love the water park sketch that, you know, Michael Longfellow got on and everything. So I think I'm not a big Coldplay person, but other than that, I thought Nate's episode was great.
So I'm feeling like through 7 episodes, I'd say like if my average ratings are probably higher than last season, but I don't know that we peaked in any episode higher than some of the peaks of last season, or especially the season before. Nate is my favorite episode of the season so far. I'm probably right there with you. I liked Ariana's. I liked Bill Burr's as well. You know, Bill was like these sketches in Bill's. I was really impressed with a lot of the writing there. But I think like they haven't reached the highs of Nate's first episode last year, or even Kristen Wiig's episode that we got in the spring. I'm still waiting for that like epic season 50 episode that when, you know, at the end of all of this, when we look back on what are the greatest episodes in the history of the show, something from season 50 is going to get in there. And right now, I don't think we have that episode. Sammy, do you feel otherwise?
You know, I'm with you. I agree. Like we haven't reached those highs yet. I really feel strongly about Nate and Mulaney's episode. I think Mulaney's is interesting because it was so, it's like in hindsight with, you know, just the election stuff, that episode, I'm curious how history is going to look at that one, but also there just weren't a ton of sketches in it. But I really felt like the hit rate for me for that episode was really high with the Beppo sketch. What's that name? The Harvey Epstein pre-tape. I mean, that's probably one of the better pre-tapes of the season as well. We were just talking about pre-tapes, but yeah, either that or Nate for me with probably honorable mention for the Ariana Grande episode, just because she was such a great host, and I was happy to see her come back. And just, you know, after so long.
And just the Castrata sketch was like a highlight of that one. Yeah, and I was gonna say, I have to say, probably my favorite Bill Burr sketch, and I watched it before I started, was the snakeskin sketch. As a former like hair metal fan myself, like I went to all those concerts. Like I saw Poison and Whitesnake and Bon Jovi and Motley Crue in concert, and I was watching it again, and I was like, oh my god, I think the closest band that comparable from Snakeskin, and I got out my cassette because I still have all of my cassettes because I'm a pack rat, is Brittany Fox. I don't know if you can see, but that's Brittany Fox. This is my cassette from 1988, and I was like, yeah. So I watched a couple of their videos, and I was like, yep, there's Andrew, just doing his thing. So.
Yeah, that was really well done. I think, you know, like I said, I really like the Nate episode. Mulaney had his moments, Burr had his moments, and definitely Ariana. I think that for me, like no episode has come together as absolutely epic yet, but I do feel like, like I said, everything has been pretty solid overall. I'm wondering if in December we're finally going to get that episode. So it's hard to predict Paul Mescal coming in and what we may get from him. Perhaps, you know, one of the last 2 December ones, you know, could be something exciting. But, you know, do you have any feelings or predictions for what you'd like to see in December, Michael?
You know, I'm intrigued by the Paul Mescal episode. At first I was like, wait, who is that again? And I was like, okay, I'm not going to see Gladiator 2. I mean, maybe, but and then I realized he was in All of Us Strangers, which I haven't seen yet, which I think all my friends said it was kind of devastating. So I haven't watched it yet, but I think I need to now. So I'm intrigued by him. Gosh, I don't know. I feel like if the one alumni rumor that I haven't heard rumors, but my thought when you were talking was maybe Sandler.
Do you have a guess?
Sandler. I'm going to guess Sandler.
Okay. Yeah, you're in the right era.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I gathered. So I feel like that's going to be something kind of big and crazy, and we're going to see more, you know, alumni and just kind of surprise appearances in that one, probably. I'm excited. I just kind of roll with it and see what happens, and I'm just excited.
Yeah, I could tell. I could see that you're such a big fan of the show, and I'm so happy to finally get to like talk to you face to face and get to hear your opinions on it. So, is there anything else you want to say about this season, or any other questions you wanted to ask Sammy or I while you're on with us tonight?
Yeah, I guess kind of thinking, looking back and everything. What about this season kind of compares to your kind of like nostalgic sweet spot? Maybe I know the Lonely Island is a big thing, but maybe other than Lonely Island, what kind of what hits that sweet
Yeah,
spot for you?
Lonely Island off the board, I would say that I really feel like the cold opens have been a big improvement for me this season. I really liked what they did, not only in the Bill Burr one, but in the Charli XCX episode last time.
Yeah.
I love that we like opened up on a shot of the White House, and then we got to see Dana and James sitting there having a conversation. And for me, like that's something that I've been missing from the show for a while. It felt like in, the last few seasons, it's been very monologue-y, or like now we're going to cut to this scene and now we're going to have news anchor cut to that scene. Very like different than what we got for decades at the show. And even during the first Trump administration, the focus of these cold opens was so much on like who was going to play like the
Right.
Secretary of Agriculture that we never like got the full scene build up. And I think that they have an opportunity now with James, who does a really good impression and has built a character out of the impression, to go back to what made SNL sketches so great, and sort of, if you were watching the show as a time capsule, feel like you really got what was happening in that moment through SNL's eyes. So I feel like that's been my throwback moment this season, that I feel like they finally hit on something that I've been asking them to do for a few seasons.
Cool.
Sammy, what about you?
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean it's hard with cold opens and Lonely Island off the board now. I mean, I agree with you. I think the cold opens have been like very, very strong, but I don't know, for some reason this question made me think of the Longfellow water slide sketch, and just something about being able to see. I don't know. I don't know if I'm nostalgic for this or I just like it, but just seeing a cast member really just get their voice on the show and get an opportunity, which I do feel like I am a little nostalgic for, because as we were talking about earlier, there are just so many, cast members over the last couple of years, even, someone like Longfellow, who's been on the show for 3 years, not really getting those opportunities. And I do feel like we are starting to see that change within sort of the construct of the show back to maybe how things were when I started watching. So I think that is kind of where I'm going with that question.
Cool.
Thanks for asking, Michael. And so great to get to talk to you. And please don't be a stranger. Call back whenever. We're always happy to have you on our show.
Definitely. And just I've posted a link to my essay on my Blue Sky. I have my handle at mvankerkove. That's my Instagram, Twitter for now, Blue Sky. So you'll be able to find it if you're interested in checking it out.
I'm going to go read it as soon as we're done here. I'm excited to go see what went into it. So thanks for coming on with us, Michael. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Yep.
See you later.
Yeah.
Thanks. All right, Sammy, we got one more patron coming on with us. Last but not least, let's bring in our closer. Brennan Keller is here. Brennan, what's going on, man?
I'm doing pretty good. Mic working and everything. Just checking that out.
Sounds great.
That sounds great.
Yeah, what concert did you go to this weekend?
I saw Social Animals, band from Minnesota. They have another show tomorrow I can't make because I'm double booked. So that happens. It happens. So
Brennan, what can you tell me about Gracie Abrams? Are you familiar with her?
4 times live. Once in 100 250 capacity. I've seen her twice in really small rooms. Once with Taylor Swift opening for her, and then Taylor Swift other way, And then I saw her open for Olivia Rodrigo too. So
cool.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
I like
if Gracie Abrams was ever on SNL, what would you be excited to see her? Or what would you? How would you feel about that?
I don't know if you follow. I mean, it's still Twitter, but Twitter doesn't seem to really like Gracie Abrams. I like Gracie Abrams. I like I'd be excited for. She'd be a great musical guest. I feel. I don't know how many people she'd add to viewership wise, but I think she's talented enough and more than big enough to be on the show. So.
Okay. Well, yeah, we shall see if we see her name pop up when the show announces the upcoming headliners. So,
Okay.
Brennan, How are you feeling about the last few episodes of season 50 now that we're through this run of Mulaney, Burr, and Charli XCX?
I very, very, very much enjoyed November and end of October. This is probably my favorite section so far this season. So,
what have you liked about it?
I just thought, personally, for there was a discussion earlier about what type of sketches people enjoy, and this isn't for everyone. Well, not every sketch is going to be for everyone, but I personally thought I was a lot higher on Bill Burr than most people. I mean, most people in the podcast here were pro that Bill Burr episode, but I really liked that one. I was lower on the John Mulaney episode than many people. It was still very enjoyable, but I really liked the Charli XCX episode outside of maybe one sketch. But if I had to look at them in groups, I would like the Ariana Grande one is my favorite, but this was my favorite. If I had to do like 2, and then 3, like these 3 overall are better than if I had to rate the 4 for the first half of the season. So.
And is that the general consensus on Reddit? And if you have not heard Brennan on the show, he's like the Reddit guy. So he knows like what all of the Reddit audience on the Live from New York subreddit, like what sketches they like, what they don't like. And sometimes we do a fun quiz on here going over our guesses because it's a completely different audience sometimes. I know there are some podcast listeners over there as well, but it's always fascinating to get their opinions. So how does the general, Reddit audience feel versus how you feel about these last few?
Opposite. I do want to drop the biggest bombshell ever, though, and that the John Mulaney episode is the highest rated overall episode in history on Reddit. So
the new
so
one.
How does that work?
Yes.
Yeah. What are the rate? Like, how do people rate the show on Reddit?
So the easy way to explain it is, if you liked it, you give it a thumbs up. If you don't like it, you give it a thumbs down. At the end of, however long, I just look at the until people stop really looking at the post. It's called Sketch Sorting Sunday. So on Sunday through that next week or so, everyone looks at the sketches and just say, hey, we like that one, we didn't like that one. So for the John Mulaney
now,
episode,
if only all those thumbs uppers could vote.
Yes, exactly. But so for John Mulaney episode, there was only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 11 segments of it. So I just divided like how well the segment did divided by the number of segments, and that ended up everything overall was good. So that means this is a very good episode. So that means if everything is good, that means the score is good. Like you can have one really, really, really bad thing that tanks an entire episode. Like, for example, Nate Bargatze lost a whole bunch of points because of how many people disliked Coldplay. Or
that's so
like if your sketches aren't very good, then like that's the biggest chunk of the episode, and that's gonna tank how overall your episode is. So in terms of
that's really interesting,
the algorithm / averages. So
but that's absolutely fascinating. Do you have a favorite sketch of the season so far, Brennan?
Favorite sketch for me, probably Devil Dogs Drop. I like that. I just really enjoyed it. So Nate Bargatze gets a
What is Devil Dogs Drop?
That's the name of the water slide, of course.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I that also lost me. That's not what's called on YouTube, right?
No, it's not. But I have my own little spreadsheet here that I have to keep track of. So, but yeah, I like that one a lot.
I was going through literally my mind. I was like, did I not watch an SNL sketch from the season? I was like, what the?
For example, I just I'm making this during the show and I don't want to miss anything. So as soon as I see like a placard or anything, I write that down, so I don't have to I can actually watch the episode. So Like that's an easy
Yeah,
easy
got
way
it.
to
I
put
mean,
it,
that
so.
seems like a pretty good consensus sketch as like a very good live sketch for what's out there. I still think for me from the live sketches this season, I still have to say like Washington's Dream 2 for
Mhm.
me was really, really well done, and obviously won't get the credit because of Washington's Dream 1, but it was so good. And then
Yes.
I mean, that Baldwin sketch that we got in the Bill Burr episode, I still think about it and laugh. Like it was so exactly the type of SNL that I grew up on, which was just such stupidity. Like sometimes
Mhm.
I just need something that feels like very like junk food. Like sometimes if I've said this before in the show, like sometimes I'll watch an episode of Friends or something if I just like need a moment of like I'm just gonna laugh at something so ridiculous. And
Exactly.
that was what it was to me. Just a very silly sketch.
Yeah, I can always enjoy anything that's dumb humor. I kind of lean more towards that. I watched a movie the other day called The Emu War, and it was an Australian movie, parody movie based on the news history story of Australia going to war against emus, where they just it was mostly just, hey, we're gonna hunt all the emus. There's too many of them. That was like the answer. But the movie was entirely a parody movie, and like if you've ever seen Epic Movie or any of those like date movie, anything like that, it was so bad, but like tears in my eyes laughing so hard. And when an SNL sketch like gets that so far like dumb or so far just you can laugh
We
so
need
hard
more
you can
dumb
get
stuff in our
tears in your
lives.
eye. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, 100%. So, Brennan, anything you wanted to ask Sammy and I about season 50 or any SNL related questions?
Easy. Let's see. If so, this is back. I heard this earlier. This is the one that was in my head all day, but you kind of got to it. But who would have been your choice for the post-election episode if it wasn't Bill Burr?
I think again, I want to credit one of our patrons who posted this in the patron Discord, but I think like Seth Meyers would have been a really good choice. I know that like he is like very political on his talk show and talks about how left leaning he is. But even if we got to hear his post-election thoughts on his show, I still think it could have been a really good opportunity to celebrate the show by having him there. He wouldn't take over the show. Maybe it would be a great opportunity to bring in extra alumni. And I think it just would have been like a very light show to have post-election. So for me, like I thought that was a really smart idea, no matter which way the election went, to bring in someone like Seth. But I just think that they were trying to find a derivative of Chappell. And that's how they landed
exactly
on Bill Burr.
Too. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think, Sammy?
Yeah, I mean, I think Seth Meyers is a great choice. I think similar to that vein, but I don't think would ever really happen because he has his own show as Jon Stewart. Like, just
that's where I was going on it too. Yeah,
if you're trying to get the political sort of retrospective, if you want to go like the totally other direction and just kind of basically do what they did in the cold open and then like kind of ignore the election for the rest of the episode, bring in somebody like a Tom Hanks, like an America's Dad, or just like one of those sort of like alumni hosts, just to make it more comforting, versus Bill Burr, which was kind of, like you said, very derivative. And then you're expecting to get that sort of Chappelle style monologue from Bill Burr's perspective, and then you don't really get that. So
yeah, and
he was a good host overall.
Yeah, and I liked the monologue. I know it was very dependent on the person, but like I enjoyed it for what it was. It wasn't like I like stand up, and I thought it was for a stand up monologue. It was good, but that's not what you're looking for in that time. So.
Yeah, agreed. It's a really tough spot for the show. Again, they couldn't have predicted what exactly was going to happen, and then how they ended up, with Bill, who, like I said, thought he did a good job in sketches. But overall, there were a lot of options for that night that I think we're going to look back in a few years and be like, maybe one of those people would have been good for that spot. And I think, Sammy, your suggestion of Jon Stewart would have been really fascinating. I haven't heard that one yet, but that's sort of blowing my mind a little bit because I feel like that was such like a perfect fit to get into that spot.
But just wouldn't happen because of the Daily Show and Paramount and Comedy Central. But in a world where those rules didn't apply,
John Oliver maybe.
Yeah, 100%. I think any of the talk show guys, it would have been very, very fascinating. Well, Brennan, thanks for coming on and sharing your thoughts on season 50 with us. Always great to catch up with you. And next time you come on, you'll have to bring the first half Reddit stats from the season.
I will. One interesting thing I do want to drop before it's over is the Wicked screen test. I don't think it went over very well, but that's my favorite of the recurring pre-tapes, and I really think it was not a good showing of that, and I was just disappointed. So, but Charli XCX, phenomenal. Not even good host. Probably my favorite musical guest of the year. Either just performance. The second song she did was my favorite. So. Of all of them.
Yeah,
so.
A lot of good takes coming from you. I agree. I do really love the format, but it didn't exactly work here for this one. All right, Brennan. Well, thanks for coming on with us tonight. I really appreciate getting to hear from you, and we'll chat with you soon.
Absolutely. Soon. Bye.
Thanks, buddy. All right, Sammy. So we talked to a lot of friends here tonight. So it's been quite the journey, but we have a couple of other questions. So let's just rapid fire through these questions, and we'll wrap up our show here tonight. And I'll tell you what we're doing next Monday here on the podcast. I'm very excited about the show that we have for you next Monday night. Sammy, I don't even think you know what we're doing here next Monday. So I'll tell you
I'm excited.
In just a few minutes. Okay, so first up, let's do these last couple ones. At Paige Goldstein 1107 says, do you think SNL is trying too hard to go viral on social media?
I don't really think so. I think they're just, they're making more content that is towards a younger audience, and younger audience are watching the show on social media. And I think the Domingo sketch, the original Domingo sketch, I don't know if that, maybe I'm naive or not looking at it correctly, but I don't know if they thought it was going to do what it did. So I don't think there was intention at all for it to go viral, and it just went viral because it connected with that audience that's watching stuff on TikTok and things like that. So no, I don't think they're trying too hard, and I think I don't even know if that's necessarily a bad thing. I think the show should try to appeal to a younger audience and gain new viewers.
Yeah, I think the second that the show actively tries to go viral is when the show completely sells itself out. I think these things happen super organically. So I don't know that Jimmy or Kara or Ali Levitan or Sudi Green, who all wrote the sketch, ever imagined it turned into what it would turn into. But once it did, I don't blame the show for capitalizing on the success. If you're working at a restaurant and you have a new product and all of a sudden people start talking about how good the product is, you're going to start marketing it and selling the shit out of it. So for them, when people, started liking the sketch on TikTok and then passing it around and sharing it, and eventually it hit the algorithm in the right way, I can't blame SNL for wanting to send Marcelo out and promote him as best as they can. And he's at the perfect age to do it, the perfect season, in his third season, his first season as an actual repertory cast member. A lot of things are converging on this moment. So for me, I think you have to let these things happen naturally. And if you do, you will get buy-in from older generations of the show. So I don't really think they're trying too hard, at least at this point. And if they ever do, we'll talk about it. So we'll see. All right. Joe Siegler asks, is it known how the show picks guests and music? There seems to be screamingly obvious candidates. Hello, Weird Al, who have never been on the show. Surely it's not just down to Lorne. So, Joe, I do believe that there is a team who puts this together. There's a media talent booking team who comes and makes suggestions, and then they reach out and they determine availability. So I don't think that Lorne is actively seeking new people. I don't think that Lorne is looking in the wherever people find out where new movies are coming out or when they're coming out and being oh yeah, Gladiator 2's coming out, I have to get Paul Mescal on the show. I think he's told by his team around him that's hey, new hotness is coming, this movie's going to be pretty big, why don't we see if Paul Mescal can host, or why don't we see if Pedro Pascal can host, and if he can't, let's book his co-star and bring Pedro Pascal in for a sketch or two or something like that, which is what we might see coming up next. So I don't think that this is a one-man show at this point, Sammy, right?
No, definitely not. And I think even if you look at how the way the show is produced now, there's been talk about, Lauren retiring, and it's like, it's not a one-man show. Like, he has a team around him. And, going back to the specific Weird Al question, that is like, an interesting example. There's just so many, you can name countless people who, I can't believe so-and-so never hosted SNL, like going back to Gladiator 2. Denzel Washington being in that movie, like that would be such a great get. And I do wonder, I kind of wish there was like more of a peek behind the curtain. That's why, like, would love to get somebody in the talent department, to come on SNL Stories one time, just to get, okay, if you are you going out to a Denzel and they say no, and then you go to a Pedro Pascal and then you go to a Paul Mescal, like, like, I don't think it works like that, but just getting a peek behind that curtain would be fascinating.
I would love to book Lindsay Shookus for an episode of SNL Stories. Lindsay's no longer with the show, and if she would ever be willing to do it, I would love to get like some of those stories about the bookings one day. So that's like a bucket list, SNL Stories for sure. Okay, last question of the night that we have here on our feedback forum. This one comes in from Sean Jider, who asks Sammy if Chris Rock was going to host at some point in the future, what would your expectations be for this hypothetical Chris Rock episode? And would you be happy to have him host the show?
It's funny. I 2 hours and 23 minutes. I can't believe it took so long to get to this question. What would my expectations be? I think if it were to happen, it would be a very interesting choice for somebody like Chris Rock, an alumni of the show, to be a 4-time host. Somebody who still, when I see show up at award shows, or they do show up at award shows, or do stand-up specials. Like, I think Chris Rock is super funny, but his last episode obviously was the first COVID episode of SNL, so I would hope to see some sort of redemption for him, because even though he's somebody who his time on the show as a cast member is not, he wasn't so successful as a cast member. I think he's a very successful person in comedy. So I think I'd be interested to see that happen. I would like to see maybe people from his era come by the show. I think that would be cool. But I wonder if we'll see that someday.
If it was to happen, Sean, then I would be very interested to see how this one goes, because the first time that Chris Rock hosted the show, it was, in the middle of a bunch of alumni coming back in season 22. And, he was just coming off like some really, really huge stand-up moments. I think his special went absolutely viral at the time. He had done a few seasons of SNL that didn't go so great. Then he went to In Loving Color, and he had a brief stint there. But he really picked up in the stand-up world after that, and I thought he crushed it. Ironically, Dana Carvey was a special guest on that first episode that Chris Rock hosted. And then when he came back for the last couple of times in seasons 40 and season 46, I felt like it was a little bit disappointing. I don't know that the episodes fully stacked up to our excitement about how big of a name Chris Rock is outside of the show. So I'm hoping just purely from an SNL hosting perspective that, Chris Rock, if he was to do this again, would have some redemption as far as his hosting is concerned, because I think, when we were looking at the top 50 SNL hosts that we did this past summer, he was one of the only alumni hosts that's hosted like 3 or more times that didn't crack that top 50. Chevy, and I think him, right, Sammy?
Yep, Chevy and Chris Rock. What a
Yeah.
pair.
So I think there's some hosting legacy on the line if we were able to get him back as a host in December. So thank you for the question, Sean, and I guess we'll see if that does come up over the next few days.
Can I ask you something real quick, John? Would he be somebody? Would he be somebody who maybe would have been an interesting or better booking for the post-election show than Bill Burr?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Look, again, I'm not shitting on Bill Burr because I thought that the sketches were pretty good, but I think that Chris Rock would have been really fun for the post-election episode. So, I mean, thinking back to that night where Dave Chappelle hosted for the first time in 2016, there was like this really great moment with Chris Rock and Keenan on stage and stuff like that in the monologue. And like, I thought that was a great time. So, I mean, I think that would have been a really, really fun thing and probably a universally beloved call, I would imagine. So yeah. Yeah, was that in 2016? I'm trying to think. No, when was it in 20?
You're thinking of the Eddie Murphy. You're thinking of the Eddie Murphy. Well,
it was
Eddie Murphy monologue,
yeah.
but he did appear in the election night sketch in the 2016.
That's what it was.
Chappell. Yeah.
I
knew you'd get there. I knew you'd get there.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, wait, that didn't work. That didn't sound right. But yeah, no, that's what it was. So yes, but he was in that episode, which is why I'm putting the two together. All right, so this was such a fun ride to meet all of these new patrons that joined us tonight. So I'm really appreciative for everyone for taking the time to talk to Sammy and I. So Sammy, did you have fun tonight?
Oh, absolutely. Always a fun time. Just chatting about SNL in this sort of way, just like getting to hear like what people are thinking about and how they're feeling about the season. I think it's a great temperature check as we get into these December shows. So it was a lot of fun tonight.
Yes, for sure. It was very exciting to have everybody. So thanks to everybody for joining us. So next Monday night will be our next show here on the Saturday Night Network. And it is the first time in the entire fall since season 50 started that we don't have a Monday Night Roundtable or a feedback show. So I thought it would be a really fun time to have a nice conversation with Punky Johnson, who will be joining us live next Monday night. You may have seen her in the good nights of the Charli XCX episode, so we'll definitely talk to Punky about that. But James and I are scheduled to have Punky Johnson on next Monday. We're planning on doing the show live, so we'll be doing a live SNL stories with Punky, talking about her 4 years at SNL and all of the great moments with her, and it'll be a great opportunity for you guys to come and hang out with her. So I'm really excited to get to talk to Punky next week, Sammy.
Yeah, that's an awesome booking. We love Punky. It's about time. We got her, back on the SNN and in a live format. I think would be a lot of fun, and I'd have to tune into that as well. I'm sure you guys will have some.
I was talking to her, like, should we do it live? And she's like, I'm like, there'll be a live chat. She was like, yeah, why not? Whatever you want.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
let's do it.
Yeah, no, she'll. I think that's a good recipe for success there. That's a good call.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to that. So to be reminded about that show coming up, you got to follow us on social media at the SNL Network on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, Blue Sky, Threads, everywhere where you could search for us and see all the content we have going on. Obviously, after that Punky episode, we'll be back to cover the Paul Mescal and Shabuzi episode all week long for the Hot Take Show roundtable and by the numbers for that following week. And then we are scheduled to have our next episode of Everything You Need to Know about SNL coming up a week from Thursday. So starting in December, we'll have some more EY need to know. I don't know if that can what is it? And
2.5 hours of podcasting will do that to your brain.
It's a long day. But yeah, no, seriously. Thank you to latenighter.com for being our presenting partner for the show tonight, and for everyone, all the patrons and all the listeners who joined us and hung out with Sammy and I for this show. Thank you, Sammy. Seriously, great to get to co-pilot this one with you, and for everybody who sent us in some questions. So make sure you subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify to never miss any of these shows. My name is Jon Schneider from the Saturday Night Network, and we will see you next time, everybody. Have a good one.